The underground fight club beneath Metro City's industrial district stank of sweat, blood, and desperation. Neon lights flickered against concrete walls scarred by decades of violence. 200 spectators pressed against chain-link barriers, their roars echoing through the converted warehouse as a local champion, a former Shadaloo enforcer, built like a brick wall, raised his fists in victory over his third opponent of the night. "Anyone else?" the enforcer bellowed, spitting blood onto the stained canvas. "Anyone stupid enough?" The crowd's noise died to confused murmurs as a figure emerged from the shadows near the old loading dock. Not from the fighter's entrance, from the darkness itself. He wore no flashy tournament gear. Black tactical pants, reinforced boots, a dark compression shirt that revealed a physique carved from obsidian and discipline. His face remained partially obscured by the poor lighting, but his eyes, cold, calculating, predatory, caught the overhead lights, like a wolf's. "I'll fight," the stranger said. His voice carried the kind of quiet authority that made violent men reconsider their life choices. The enforcer laughed. "You got a name, tough guy." The stranger stepped into the light, 6'2" of coiled violence, moving with the practiced silence of a born predator. Every step measured, every muscle ready. No. A pause. Not here. The fight lasted 47 seconds. The enforcer charged with the reckless confidence of a man who'd survived Shadaloo's training camps. He threw a haymaker that could dent steel, followed by a knee strike that had hospitalized his previous opponent. He hit nothing but air. The stranger moved like smoke. No, like calculation made flesh. He slipped the punch with millimeters to spare, read the knee strike's trajectory before it launched, and responded with surgical precision. A nerve strike to the brachial plexus, a joint lock that hyperextended the elbow just short of breaking, a foot sweep that used the enforcer's own momentum against him. The big man went down hard. When he tried to rise, the stranger's boot pressed against his throat, not crushing, but promising. "Stay down," the stranger said quietly. "You're done." The crowd erupted. Half in appreciation of the technical mastery they'd just witnessed, half in fear of what they'd seen in the victor's eyes. Something cold, something that didn't belong in a mere street fighter. Metro City's underground had just gained a new ghost. In the shadows of the warehouse's second-floor catwalk, a woman with ox horns styled into her hair lowered a pair of military-grade binoculars. Jury Han's smile was all teeth and malice. "Well, well," she purred to herself. "Someone interesting finally shows up in this boring-ass city." She'd been tracking Shadaloo remnants, mostly for sport, partially for revenge, when her intelligence network flagged an anomaly. A fighter who appeared from nowhere 3 days ago. No records, no history, no style that matched any known discipline. But that technique. Jury had trained with Shadaloo's best. She'd killed elite Interpol agents. She recognized mastery when she saw it, and the man in that ring possessed something rare, a complete absence of wasted motion. Every strike had been a thesis on violence. Every movement had served exactly one purpose. "Maybe Metro City won't be boring after all," she whispered, vanishing into the darkness as silently as the mysterious fighter had arrived. 20 blocks away, in a modest apartment above a ramen shop, Chun-Li sat at her desk surrounded by holographic displays and paper files. The Interpol agent had been tracking unusual activity in Metro City's underground. Fights ending too quickly, patterns suggesting a professional operative, not a tournament fighter. Her computer pinged with a new video upload from one of her street informants. She watched the 47-second fight 3 times. Nerve strikes, joint manipulation, combat, efficiency training, she muttered, her detective's mind cataloging every detail. Military? No, too precise. Assassin? Doesn't kill. Then what? She froze the video on the stranger's face as he'd turned to leave the ring. That jawline, those eyes, the way he moved through a crowd like he was tracking escape routes and threat vectors simultaneously. Chun-Li had been hunting criminals since childhood. She knew that look, the look of a man who'd made darkness his weapon. She reached for her phone, then hesitated. This required a delicate touch. Metro City was still recovering from Shadaloo's fall, and the power vacuum had attracted predators from every shadow. If this fighter was another would-be crime lord, she'd bring him down. But something in his restraint, the way he'd chosen not to break that enforcer's arm when he easily could have, suggested a different story. "Who are you?" she whispered to the frozen image. "And what are you doing in my city?" Bruce Wayne stood on the rooftop of an abandoned factory 6 blocks from the Fight Club, examining his bloodied knuckles with clinical detachment. The pain was negligible. He'd trained himself to compartmentalize physical trauma decades ago in Gotham. What concerned him was the wrongness of this place. 3 days since the accident, 3 days since his experimental dimensional scanner had intersected with some kind of energy signature he'd been tracking. Something that read similar to Lazarus Pit radiation, but fundamentally different. 3 days since reality had folded like paper and deposited him in a world that looked like Earth, but wasn't. No Alfred, no Oracle, no Batcave, no Batman. Just Bruce Wayne, stripped of every advantage except the ones carved into his body and mind through 30 years of relentless training. He'd spent the first day gathering intelligence through pure observation. This world's technology level matched his own, but the geopolitical landscape was utterly foreign. Organizations. He'd never heard of Shadaloo, something called the Secret Society, mentions of world warriors who weren't superhero team members but elite martial artists. And everywhere, talk of something called Chai or Kai, an energy that fighters could manifest into visible, devastating attacks. Bruce had witnessed impossible things in Gotham: magic, metahumans, alien technology. But this world operated on different rules. Here, a human could punch through concrete not through genetic enhancement or cybernetics, but through sheer discipline and energy manipulation. He needed information, resources, a way home. The underground fights had been a calculated risk, a way to establish presence, gather intelligence, and test this world's power ceiling. What he'd learned disturbed him. That enforcer he'd fought would have required significant effort in Gotham. Here, the man had been considered average. The crowd had been disappointed by how quickly the fight ended, expecting something more spectacular. Bruce looked at his hands again. In Gotham, his technique made him one of the planet's most dangerous humans. Here, he might be barely above street level. He needed to adapt. Fast. A sound, nearly imperceptible, but his training caught it. Boot on concrete. 40 feet behind him. Bruce turned slowly, hands loose but ready. A man stood at the rooftop's opposite edge, silhouetted against Metro City's neon-soaked skyline. White jai, red headband, bare feet despite the winter cold. His posture radiated the kind of calm that came from absolute confidence. "You fight with great discipline," the man said. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd walked the earth's corners in search of meaning. "But I sense no spirit in your technique. Only control." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "You followed me. I sensed you." The man stepped forward into the ambient light. Japanese features, somewhere in his 30s with eyes that had seen both enlightenment and horror. "My name is Ryu. I am a wanderer, seeking to master my art. What do you want?" "To understand." Ryu's gaze was uncomfortably direct. "You fight like a man at war, but the war is not with your opponents. It is with yourself." Bruce felt his jaw tighten. This stranger had gleaned in minutes what took most people years to recognize. "I don't have time for philosophy. Bruce said coldly. "Then you have already lost." Ryu settled into a ready stance, weight distributed perfectly, hands positioned for both offense and defense. In this world, technique without spirit is merely violence. You will need to learn the difference. Is that a threat? It is a warning. Ryu's hands began to glow with a faint blue light, actual light, emanating from his palms like some kind of bioluminescence. If you continue to fight with anger buried beneath control, someone will drag that anger to the surface, and you will not survive what emerges. Bruce's muscles coiled. Whatever this chai was, the man was using it as casually as breathing. "I've survived worse," Bruce said. "Have you?" Ryu's expression held something like pity. "We shall see." The wanderer bowed slightly, a gesture of respect before combat, and then vanished into the night with a single leap that carried him across an impossible distance to the next rooftop. Bruce stood alone again, his mind already cataloging what he'd witnessed. Enhanced leg strength through energy manipulation, possible applications. His communicator should have been calculating trajectories, accessing databases, pulling up threat assessments. Instead, he had nothing but his mind, his body, and a growing realization that he'd entered a world where Batman's greatest weapons, fear, information, preparation, had been stripped away, leaving only the fighter beneath the mask. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. The adventure never ends. Bruce descended from the rooftop using drainage pipes and fire escapes, his movements utterly silent despite the 3-story drop. Years of Gotham's vertical cityscape had made him an expert in urban climbing. He'd secured a temporary base in an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel. Nothing compared to the Batcave, but functional. Water access, multiple exit routes, naturally hidden from surveillance. He'd stolen tools from a construction site, borrowed a laptop from a tech store. He'd return it or compensate them if he ever got home, and begun building a rudimentary intelligence network. The laptop's screen glowed in the tunnel's darkness, displaying everything he'd compiled about this world. World warriors, elite martial artists who'd participated in something called the World Warrior Tournament. Names kept appearing. Ryu, just met. Ken Masters, American champion. Chun-Li, Interpol agent, concerning. Guile, US military, and others. These weren't just fighters. They'd reportedly taken down an entire criminal organization called Shadaloo. Shadaloo, recently collapsed dictatorship powered by something called psycho power. Its leader, M. Bison, had apparently been killed multiple times, yet kept returning. The organization's remnants were still active, still dangerous. Chi energy, the variable he couldn't quantify. Fighters could manifest their life force into tangible attacks. Fireballs, energy-enhanced strikes, techniques that defied physics as he understood it. Bruce rubbed his temples. In Gotham, he had contingencies for Superman, for the Flash, for beings that could reshape reality. Here, he was operating blind against unknown variables, with no prep time. It was terrifying. It was also liberating. For the first time in years, Bruce Wayne was fighting without the weight of Batman's legend. No one here feared the Bat. No criminals whispered his name in terror. He was just a fighter, albeit a supremely skilled one, in a world where skill was the baseline, not the exception. He pulled up the video he'd recorded of Ryu's departure. That leap, the energy in his hands. If Bruce was going to survive here, let alone find a way home, he needed to understand this world's power system, which meant he needed a teacher. And teachers in worlds like this, he suspected, didn't offer lessons kindly. They tested you first. Bruce closed the laptop and began his evening training routine. 2,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, kata from 17 different martial arts styles. Meditation to maintain the mental discipline that had kept him sane through decades of darkness. But as he moved through the forms, Ryu's words echoed. Technique without spirit is merely violence. In Gotham, violence had been the point. Fear, control, domination of criminals through superior skill and psychological warfare. Here, that might not be enough. Bruce finished his meditation and stood, his body a weapon honed to perfection, his mind a tactical computer without equal. But for the first time since he was 8 years old and watched his parents die in an alley, Bruce Wayne felt something he'd almost forgotten. Uncertainty. Metro City's underground had gained a ghost. The question was whether that ghost would become a legend or a corpse. Chun-Li had been an Interpol agent for over a decade, and one truth remained constant. Mystery fighters appearing from nowhere always meant trouble. She stood in the middle of the underground fight club at 6 a.m. after the crowds had dispersed and before the cleanup crews arrived. Yellow police tape cordoned off the ring, not because there'd been a death, but because 3 separate fighters had filed complaints about excessive force from an unknown combatant. In Metro City's underground, where broken bones were considered occupational hazards, excessive force complaints were rare enough to warrant investigation. "Show me the footage again," she said to her partner, a young tech specialist named Ravi who handled her digital forensics. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the 47-second fight from multiple angles. Chun-Li watched with the trained eye of someone who'd fought at the highest levels of global martial arts competition. "Freeze there," she commanded. The image stopped as the mystery fighter executed his nerve strike. That's the brachial plexus. Military combatives training teaches that strike, but the precision is beyond standard training. See how his fingers hit the exact pressure point? Millimeter perfect placement. Could be special forces, Ravi offered. Maybe one of Guile's guys gone rogue. Chun-Li shook her head. Guile's soldiers fight like soldiers, efficient but aggressive. This man fights like an assassin who chooses not to kill. Watch his eyes. She zoomed in on the fighter's face during the brief moment he'd been fully illuminated. His expression held no anger, no excitement, no satisfaction, just cold calculation, as if he was solving a mathematical equation rather than fighting a human being. "He's reading his opponent 3 moves ahead," she continued. "That enforcer telegraphed his knee strike by shifting his weight. A tell most fighters wouldn't catch in real-time combat. But our mystery man saw it, adjusted, and countered before the strike even launched. That's not training, that's mastery." "So what do we do?" Ravi asked. "He's not technically breaking any laws. Underground fighting exists in a gray area, and he hasn't killed anyone." Chun-Li's expression hardened. "He's disrupted 4 fights in 3 days, always appearing from nowhere and disappearing without trace. No identification, no records in any database, local, national, or international. In my experience, that level of operational security means one of 3 things: deep cover intelligence operative, high-level criminal, or someone with serious resources hiding from something." She pulled up a map of Metro City, marking the locations of each fight. The pattern wasn't random. Each venue formed a strategic triangle around the city's industrial district, with perfect sight lines and multiple escape routes. "He's gathering intelligence," she said quietly. "Testing the local power structure, establishing presence while maintaining anonymity. This is reconnaissance behavior." "For what?" "That's what I intend to find out." Chun-Li's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. She read it, frowned, then typed a quick response. "I just got confirmation from my contacts in the World Warrior Network. Ryu encountered an unknown fighter last night. Matches our man's description." "What happened?" "Ryu said he sensed a warrior imprisoned by his own discipline." "Whatever that means." Chun-Li closed the holographic display. But Ryu doesn't use language like that lightly. If he's concerned enough to report it, we have a problem. She headed for the exit, her mind already formulating approach strategies. Confronting an operative of this caliber required careful planning. If she came in too aggressively, he'd disappear into Metro City's shadows. Too passively, and she'd lose what little trail she had. Ravi, pull every camera feed within 5 blocks of each fight location. I want traffic cams, ATM cameras, private security, everything. This man is good, but nobody's perfect. He has to have left a trail somewhere. On it, Lieutenant. Chun-Li stepped into the cold morning air, her breath misting in the industrial district's perpetual smog. Somewhere in this city, a ghost was hunting. But Chun-Li had spent her entire life hunting ghosts. Shadaloo had taught her that evil thrived in shadows. She'd spent years dragging it into the light. This mystery fighter, whoever he was, would be no different. Bruce had been awake for 36 hours straight. In Gotham, this would have been concerning but manageable with stimulants from the Batcave's medical bay. Here, he was relying on discipline alone, and his body was beginning to protest. He sat cross-legged in his subway tunnel base, surrounded by handwritten notes and stolen newspapers. The laptop displayed a security camera feed he'd hacked. Illegal, but necessary. His code-breaking skills translated across dimensions, fortunately, and Metro City's digital infrastructure was robust, but not impenetrable. What he'd learned over 3 sleepless days had rewritten his understanding of human potential. This world's elite fighters weren't meta-humans. They were humans who'd transcended normal limits through discipline and energy manipulation. Ryu could throw fireballs of concentrated chi. A man named Dalsim could apparently teleport and stretch his limbs. A fighter called Blanca had been transformed by jungle survival into something beyond normal human physiology, but it wasn't mutation or alien DNA or super soldier serum. It was training, decades of it, brutal, consuming, spiritual physical fusion that turned the human body into something more. Bruce understood that path intimately. He'd spent 7 years walking the earth, training with every master who would teach him. Ninjutsu in Japan, escape artistry in Europe, manhunting in Africa. He'd pushed his body to its absolute limits and then found new limits to push. But he'd never encountered this. Energy manipulation as fundamental as breathing. The ability to manifest willpower into physical force. He needed to understand it. Not just for survival, but because his detective's mind couldn't let a mystery stand unsolved. The laptop pinged, motion detected on one of his surveillance feeds. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he watched a woman approach the underground fight club he'd visited last night. Chinese features, athletic build, distinctive hair buns styled with white ribbons. She moved like a fighter, her posture suggesting both martial arts training and law enforcement experience. He pulled up the facial recognition software he'd coded using this world's public databases. It took longer without the Batcave's quantum processors, but he got results. Chun-Li, age 29, Interpol Special Agent. Specialization, organized crime. Known associations, World Warriors, ICPO Anti-Shadaloo Task Force. Bruce's jaw tightened. An Interpol agent investigating his activities meant his operational security had failed somewhere. He'd been careful, no unnecessary conversations, cash-only transactions, minimal digital footprint, but careful wasn't perfect. He watched her examine the fight club, noting how she analyzed the space with a professional's eye. She was reconstructing the fight from environmental evidence, scuff marks on the canvas, blood spatter patterns, sight lines. "She's good," Bruce muttered to himself. The woman pulled out a handheld device and began scanning the area. Some kind of advanced forensics tool. Bruce didn't recognize the specific technology, but he understood its purpose. She was looking for biological traces, possibly chi energy residue. He needed to move. If she had his DNA, she could potentially track him through this world's databases. He didn't know if Bruce Wayne existed as an identity here, but he couldn't risk exposure. Bruce stood, his body protesting the sudden movement after hours of stillness. He ignored the discomfort. Pain was just information, and right now it was telling him he'd pushed too hard too fast. He needed rest, but more urgently, he needed to understand why an Interpol agent was investing resources into tracking a fighter who'd committed no actual crimes. Unless... Bruce pulled up news archives, searching for recent organized crime activity in Metro City. The pattern became clear immediately. Shadaloo remnants had been active. Weapons trafficking, human smuggling, illegal chai enhancement drugs. Several operations had been disrupted by unknown parties in the past month. Some of those disruptions matched the locations of fights he'd participated in. "Damn," Bruce said quietly. He hadn't just been gathering intelligence at random fight clubs. He'd unknowingly inserted himself into an active criminal investigation. The venues he'd chosen for reconnaissance were apparently Shadaloo front operations, which meant Chun-Li thought he was either a criminal or a vigilante. In Gotham, that distinction had been razor thin. Here, where he had no reputation and no proof of intentions, the distinction might get him arrested or targeted by both law enforcement and criminals. Bruce made a decision. He needed to control this narrative before it controlled him. And that meant doing something he'd avoided since arriving. Direct contact with someone who knew this world's rules. He'd approach the Interpol agent, on his terms, in a location of his choosing, with multiple escape routes planned. But first, he needed to understand what kind of fighter she was. Credentials meant nothing. Gotham had taught him that badges didn't equal competence. He pulled up video footage of something called the World Warrior Tournament, found a match featuring Chun-Li, and stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. The woman was terrifying. She moved like lightning given human form, executing kicks that created sonic booms. Actual sonic booms from pure speed and chai enhancement. One technique, something the commentators called Kikoken, fired a sphere of blue energy that shattered a concrete pillar. But what struck Bruce was her precision. Every movement had purpose, no wasted energy, no showboating. She fought like someone who'd spent her entire life perfecting her art, and that art was beautiful in its lethality. "She's leagues above me," Bruce admitted aloud. In terms of raw power, absolutely. But Bruce hadn't survived Gotham for 15 years by matching his opponent's strengths. He survived by exploiting weaknesses, by fighting smarter rather than harder. Chun-Li's weakness, if he could call it that, was her commitment to justice. She'd spent years hunting Shadaloo because they'd killed her father. That kind of personal vendetta created predictable patterns. If Bruce could prove he shared her goals, that he was hunting criminals, not becoming one, she might become an ally rather than an enemy. Or she might arrest him for vigilantism. This world's legal framework was still unclear. Bruce shut down the laptop and began his preparation routine. If he was going to approach an Interpol agent, he needed every advantage. That meant proper rest, 4 hours of sleep, enough to maintain peak cognitive function. Then reconnaissance to find the optimal meeting location. Then a conversation that would determine whether he'd gained an ally in this strange world, or made an enemy powerful enough to end him. Chun-Li found the first real clue at 2 p.m. that afternoon. Traffic camera footage from 3 blocks away showed a figure matching their mystery fighter's build and movement pattern. He'd been more careful about avoiding cameras than any normal person, but he'd had to cross an intersection, and for 1.3 seconds, he'd been captured in profile. Ravi enhanced the image using ICPO's advanced algorithms. The resolution was poor, but it showed enough. A face that could have been anywhere from late 30s to early 40s, with a jawline that suggested either genetics or extreme physical conditioning. More importantly, it showed his destination trajectory. He was heading toward the old industrial sector, Ravi said, tracing the route on a map. That area's mostly abandoned since Shadaloo's weapon foundries got shut down. Perfect place to hide. Too perfect, Chun-Li said, frowning. He's smart enough to avoid cameras, but walks through a major intersection. That's not a mistake. That's a message, Ravi finished. He wanted you to find this. Chun-Li felt a chill run down her spine. She'd hunted enough intelligent criminals to recognize the pattern. This wasn't a fighter trying to stay hidden. This was an operative who decided to reveal himself, on his own terms, in his own time. He's setting up a meeting, she said quietly. Question is, why? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Encrypted message. Old Metro City Station, platform 7 midnight. Come alone, I'm not your enemy. Chun-Li stared at the message for a long moment. Every instinct screamed ambush. But something about the phrasing, I'm not your enemy, not I'm not dangerous, suggested a different possibility. Maybe the mystery fighter was exactly what he appeared to be. Someone fighting criminals in the shadows, like she'd been doing for years. Or maybe he was Shadaloo's most sophisticated operative yet, and this was an elaborate trap. I'm going, she said. That's insane, Ravi protested. We don't know anything about this guy except that he can take down professional fighters in under a minute. Which is why I'm going alone. Chun-Li's expression hardened. If he wanted me dead, he could have ambushed me at any of the crime scenes. He chose a meeting instead. That suggests negotiation, not violence. And if you're wrong? Chun-Li smiled grimly. Then he'll learn that I didn't become a world warrior by playing it safe. She spent the rest of the day preparing. Combat gear hidden under civilian clothes, backup communicator, emergency beacon, and hours spent reviewing everything she knew about the mystery fighter's technique. His style was a fusion she'd never encountered before. Elements of ninjutsu, traditional boxing, judo, even what looked like Keiji fighting method. But underneath it all was something uniquely his, a tactical approach that treated every fight like a chess match. She'd need to be ready for anything. As midnight approached, Chun-Li made her way to Old Metro City Station. The abandoned subway platform had been shut down for 5 years after structural damage from one of Shadaloo's attacks. The city kept promising to restore it, but budget problems meant it remained a hollow shell, perfect for a clandestine meeting. She descended the damaged escalator, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The platform stretched into darkness, illuminated only by emergency lights that flickered with inconsistent power. I'm here, she called out. Show yourself. For a moment, nothing. Then a voice from the shadows. Thank you for coming alone. He stepped into the light, and Chun-Li got her first clear look at the man who disrupted Metro City's underground in 3 days. He was ordinary. No, not ordinary. Deliberately unremarkable. Average height for a fighter, athletic build, dark hair, Caucasian features. The kind of face that would blend into any crowd, but his eyes. Those cold, calculating eyes belonged to someone who'd seen horrors and survived by becoming something harder than horror itself. You're the one disrupting the underground fights, Chun-Li said, her hand resting casually near her concealed weapon. Why? Intelligence gathering, he said simply. I'm new to this city. The fastest way to understand a place's power structure is to engage with it directly. That's a dangerous strategy. I'm used to danger. He shifted his weight slightly, and Chun-Li recognized the tell. He was ready to fight or flee in an instant. I know you're Interpol. I know you've been tracking Shadaloo, remnants. I want to help. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. His honesty was almost refreshing. But I have information you need, and you have knowledge I need. That's the basis for cooperation. Chun-Li studied him carefully. Every instinct said he was telling the truth, but her instincts had been wrong before, and when the cost had been measured in lives. What kind of information? She asked. 3 of the fight clubs you're watching are connected to a Shadaloo weapon smuggling operation. The enforcer I fought 2 nights ago has been moving psycho power enhancers through underground channels. And there's a new player in the city, someone called the Spider, who's consolidating remnant factions. Chun-Li's blood went cold. That intelligence was accurate. Painfully so. Intel she'd spent weeks gathering through her own investigation. "How do you know that?" she demanded. "I'm a detective," he said. "It's what I do." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you, right now." He paused, and for the first time, something that might have been vulnerability flickered across his face. "I'm not from here. I don't know your world's rules. I don't know who to trust, but I recognize justice when I see it, and you've dedicated your life to it. So I'm taking a risk, trusting you with information that makes me vulnerable." "What do you want in return?" "Training," he said. "I need to understand chi manipulation. In my previous situation, I relied on technique and tactics. Here, that's not enough. I need to evolve or I'll get killed." Chun-Li processed this. A fighter powerful enough to dominate underground circuits was admitting vulnerability. That was either genuine humility or sophisticated manipulation. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. Then, Bruce. Just Bruce. No surname, no origin story, but the way he said it, like he was revealing something precious and dangerous, made Chun-Li believe it was real. "All right, Bruce," she said slowly. "Here's my offer. You give me everything you know about Shadaloo operations in Metro City. I'll verify it. If it checks out, I'll introduce you to someone who can teach you about chai, but..." She stepped closer, her eyes hard as steel. "If I find out you've lied to me, if you've harmed innocents, if you're playing both sides, I will end you. Am I clear?" "Crystal," Bruce said. And then, surprising her, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect between warriors. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Chun-Li said. "The person I have in mind as a teacher doesn't coddle students. If you want to learn chi manipulation, you'll have to prove you can handle the training. And trust me, it's going to hurt." Bruce's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. "I'm familiar with pain." "We'll see," Chun-Li said. She pulled out a secure communicator and tossed it to him. He caught it one-handed. "That's encrypted. Use it to contact me. Now tell me everything you know about the Spider." As Bruce began detailing his intelligence, precise, comprehensive, tactically sound, Chun-Li felt her assessment shifting. This wasn't a criminal. This was a professional operative, someone trained to her level or beyond. But from where? And why was he really here? She'd find out. Eventually. For now, Metro City had gained an unexpected ally in its war against Shadaloo's remnants, and Chun-Li had gained a mystery she was determined to solve. Ken Masters was having a spectacular day, which usually meant something was about to go very wrong. He'd just closed a business deal in Metro City that would bring his martial arts foundation another $3 million in funding. His wife, Eliza, had called that morning to say their son, Mel, had finally mastered the rising uppercut technique. At age 8, the kid was already showing championship potential, and he'd gotten word that Ryu was in town, which meant they could finally have the rematch both had been anticipating since their last tournament bout. Then Chun-Li had called with a simple request. "Ken, I need you to evaluate someone. Fighter, unknown origin, exceptional technique. Meets us at your dojo in an hour." Which is how Ken found himself standing in his private training facility in Metro City's upscale district, waiting to meet a mystery fighter that had the legendary Chun-Li intrigued enough to arrange an introduction. The dojo was Ken's pride, a 12,000 square foot facility with traditional wooden floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and state-of-the-art training equipment. He'd built it as a place where serious fighters could train without the underground's brutality or the tournament circuit's politics. Chun-Li arrived first, and Ken noted immediately that she was in her on-duty mode, alert, cautious, ready for violence. "Who is this guy?" Ken asked, falling into step beside her as they entered the main training floor. "He calls himself Bruce, no surname, no background I can verify." "But Ken," she lowered her voice, "his technique is unlike anything I've seen. He's a fusion fighter, dozens of styles integrated seamlessly, and he fights like every move might be his last. Dangerous. Extremely. But I think he's on our side." She paused. "I need you to test him, push him, see what he's really capable of." Ken grinned. "You want me to beat him up for science?" "I want you to see if he breaks," Chun-Li said seriously. "Because I'm considering bringing him into our network, and I need to know if he can handle what we face." Before Ken could respond, the dojo's entrance doors opened. A man walked in, average height, athletic build, dark hair, moving with the kind of economical grace that spoke of decades of combat training. But it was his presence that caught Ken's attention. Most fighters walked into a new dojo with bravado or nervousness. This man walked in like he was already cataloging exits, weapons, tactical advantages, like he was preparing for war in a place designed for peace. "Bruce," Chun-Li said, "this is Ken Masters, one of the World Warriors, US National Fighting Champion, and one of the best fighters on the planet." Bruce nodded politely. "Mr. Masters." "Just Ken." He extended his hand. Bruce shook it, firm grip, calluses in all the right places. "Chun-Li says you're looking to understand chi manipulation." "Among other things," Bruce said. His voice was level, controlled. "I appreciate you taking the time." "No problem. But here's how this works." Ken gestured to the training floor. "I need to see what you've got. Can't teach you chi control if I don't understand your baseline. So we spar. Full contact, but we both hold back enough to avoid permanent damage. Sound good?" Bruce glanced at Chun-Li, who nodded slightly. "All right," he said, removing his jacket to reveal a compression shirt that showed a physique carved from discipline. Scars crisscrossed his torso, old wounds that spoke of a violent history. Ken raised an eyebrow. "You've been through some war." "You could say that." They took positions on opposite sides of the training floor. Ken settled into his fighting stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands up, weight balanced for explosive movement. It was a stance refined through 3 decades of training under the legendary Master Guken, perfected through countless tournament battles. Bruce's stance was harder to define. Elements of boxing, but lower. Hints of ninjutsu, but more aggressive. It looked like someone had taken 20 different fighting styles and extracted only the most lethal components. "Ready?" Ken asked. "Yes." Ken moved first, a testing jab, quick and precise. Bruce slipped it with minimal effort, reading the trajectory perfectly. Ken threw a combination. Jab, cross, low kick. Bruce parried the punches and stepped inside the kick's arc, negating its power. "Good," Ken said, genuinely impressed. "Let's pick up the pace." He launched into a proper assault, the kind of speed and precision that had won him national championships. Straight punches, hook kicks, knee strikes, each one flowing into the next with the fluidity of water. Bruce defended beautifully, his blocks and parries placed with surgical accuracy. But Ken noticed something troubling. The man wasn't counter-attacking. He was purely defensive, reading Ken's attacks and neutralizing them without committing to offense. That wasn't how you won fights. That was how you survived them. "Come on," Ken said, increasing the pressure. "Hit me back." Bruce's expression remained neutral, but he finally committed, a lightning-fast, straight punch aimed at Ken's solar plexus. Ken blocked it and felt the impact reverberate through his forearm. No chi enhancement, but the precision was extraordinary. Bruce had targeted the exact spot where a strike would wind an opponent without causing permanent damage. "Better," Ken said. He spun into a roundhouse kick, fast enough to challenge professional fighters. Bruce ducked under it, transitioned into a low sweep that nearly took Ken's legs out. Ken jumped, came down with a hammer fist that Bruce rolled away from. They separated, circling each other. Ken was breathing slightly harder. This guy was good. But there was something missing. No passion. No fire. Bruce fought like a machine, calculating optimal responses. Time to change that. Ken let a small amount of chi flow into his hands, just enough to make them glow faintly red. "Here's what you're missing," he said, and launched a chi-enhanced punch. The difference was night and day. His fist cut through the air with 3 times the speed and force of his previous strikes. Bruce tried to block and got launched backward 10 feet, crashing into the dojo's padded wall. Chun-Li tensed, ready to intervene, but Bruce was already rising, shaking out his arm. Ken could see the calculation in his eyes, adjusting threat assessment. "That's chi," Ken explained. "Life force energy converted into physical power. Every serious fighter in this world can use it to some degree. Without it, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back." Bruce tested his arm, likely bruised, but functional. "How do I learn it?" "That's the problem," Ken said. "Chi isn't a technique you memorize. It's about feeling the energy in your body and releasing it. Most people train for years before they can manifest even basic chi strikes. It requires letting go of control and trusting your instincts." "I don't let go of control," Bruce said flatly. "Then you'll never master chi," Ken replied. He powered up more, his hands blazing with red energy, his hair lifting slightly from the aura. "Let me show you what happens when you fight a real chi user without defenses." He attacked again, this time with the speed and power that had earned him the title of World Warrior. Chi-enhanced strikes that could shatter concrete, kicks that created wind pressure, a devastating combination that had defeated champions across the globe. Bruce defended desperately. His technique was flawless, every block textbook perfect, every dodge calculated precisely. But flawless technique couldn't overcome the raw power differential. Ken's spinning heel kick connected with Bruce's ribs, pulled at the last second, but still carrying enough force to crack bone. Bruce stumbled, gasping. Ken pressed the advantage with a rising uppercut, the legendary Shoryuken, though he kept it at about 30% power. It still caught Bruce's chin and lifted him off his feet, slamming him back to the mat. "Stay down," Ken said, not unkindly. "You're tough, but you can't beat chi with technique alone." Bruce didn't stay down. He rose, blood trickling from his split lip, his breath coming in controlled gasps. And Ken saw something shift in his eyes. Anger, just a flash, quickly suppressed, but it had been there. "Again," Bruce said through gritted teeth. "Bruce, you're hurt," Chun-Li started. "Again." His voice was harder now, less controlled, more human. Ken studied him for a moment. This was interesting. The machine-like fighter was showing cracks. Maybe there was hope for him after all. "All right," Ken said. "But this time, I want you to try something. When I attack, don't just defend. Feel your body's energy. That anger you just felt. That's a door to your chi. Not the right door. Anger leads to corrupted power, but it's a door. Find it. Open it. Let yourself feel." Bruce's jaw tightened. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I let go..." Bruce's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of old trauma. "I might not stop." Ken understood immediately. This wasn't just about fighting technique. This was about a man who'd built his entire identity on control because he was terrified of what lived underneath it. Ken had seen that before. Hell, he'd been that before Guken had taught him to balance power with humanity. "The difference between a warrior and a monster," Ken said gently, "is that a warrior chooses when to unleash his power and when to restrain it. You've mastered restraint. Now you need to learn release. And yeah, it's scary. But that's what makes it powerful. Bruce stood there, bleeding, exhausted. And for a moment, Ken thought he'd refuse. Then Bruce settled back into his fighting stance. But this time, something was different. His shoulders were looser, his breathing deeper, his eyes less calculating, more present. "Show me," Bruce said. Ken smiled. "Now we're talking." He attacked again. Not at full power, but enough to push Bruce beyond pure technique. And this time, Bruce didn't just defend. He felt. Ken threw a chai-enhanced straight punch. Bruce parried, and for just a split second, Ken felt a pulse of energy from the contact point. Barely perceptible, probably unconscious, but it was there. Raw potential. "There," Ken shouted. "Did you feel that?" I felt something. Bruce blocked another strike, and again, that tiny pulse of energy. "That's your chai trying to manifest," Ken explained, continuing the assault. "It's responding to danger, to need. You just have to give it permission." They fought for another 3 minutes. Ken kept the pressure constant, forcing Bruce to react on instinct rather than calculation. And slowly, incrementally, those tiny pulses of energy grew stronger. Bruce was learning, fast. Finally, Ken called a halt. Both fighters were breathing hard, sweat-soaked and exhausted. Bruce had 2 cracked ribs, Ken could tell from how he was breathing, a split lip, and probably a dozen other minor injuries. But his eyes were alive in a way they hadn't been at the start. "That was good," Ken said, offering his hand. "Really good. You've got potential, Bruce. Raw as hell, but it's there." Bruce shook his hand, wincing at the movement. "Thank you for the lesson." "That wasn't a lesson. That was an evaluation." Ken turned to Chun-Li. "He's legit. Technique's off the charts, and he's got chi potential if someone can teach him to let go of that death grip control, but..." He looked back at Bruce seriously. "Whoever you were before you came here, whatever made you this way, you need to deal with that. Because chi responds to your spirit. If your spirit's at war with itself, your chi will be too." "Noted," Bruce said quietly. Chun-Li approached, examining Bruce's injuries with a professional eye. "You need medical attention." "I'll manage." That wasn't a suggestion. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling someone, a healer who specializes in training injuries, and while she's fixing your ribs, you and I are going to have a long conversation about what you're really doing in Metro City." Bruce looked like he wanted to argue, but the pain was clearly catching up to him. He nodded reluctantly. As Chun-Li made the call, Ken pulled Bruce aside. "Hey, that thing you said about not stopping if you let go? I get it. I used to fight angry, spent years learning to channel power without letting it consume me. If you want, I can help you with that. Not just the chi stuff, the mental game." Bruce met his eyes. "Why would you help me? You don't know anything about me." "True," Ken admitted, "but I know fighters, and you're one of us, even if you don't realize it yet. Besides," he grinned, "anyone who can take a 30% shoryuken and get back up has earned my respect. That's warrior spirit. Man, just needs proper direction." For the first time since arriving, Bruce's expression softened slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate that." "Don't thank me yet," Ken said. "Wait until you meet your actual teacher. Chun-Li's got someone in mind, and if it's who I think it is, you're in for a world of pain." "I can handle pain." "Physical pain, sure." Ken's expression grew serious. "But the kind of training you need? That's not about pushing your body. It's about breaking down the walls in your mind. And that's a different kind of hurt altogether." Bruce absorbed this, his detective's mind clearly processing implications. "Who's the teacher?" "Can't say for sure." But there's only one person Chun-Li trusts with cases this complex. Ken's grin turned slightly sadistic. And if I'm right, you're about to meet the wandering warrior himself. Ryu. You've met? Briefly. He sensed something in me. Yeah. Ryu does that. Man's basically a chi-reading psychic when he wants to be. Ken clapped Bruce on the shoulder. Gently, given the injuries. Word of advice? When he offers to train you, don't overthink it. Just say yes. He'll push you harder than you've ever been pushed, but you'll come out the other side a completely different fighter. Bruce nodded slowly. I'll keep that in mind. Chun-Li returned, phone in hand. The healer's on her way, and I reached out to Ryu. He'll meet us tomorrow at dawn. She looked at Bruce. I hope you're ready. He doesn't do half measures. Neither do I, Bruce said. Ken laughed. Oh man, this is going to be entertaining. Chun-Li, you mind if I watch tomorrow? I want to see how our mystery man handles Ryu's teaching methods. Be my guest, Chun-Li said. Something tells me we're all going to learn something from this. As they waited for the healer, Bruce sat against the dojo wall, his mind clearly working through everything that had happened. Ken watched him with interest. This fighter, this detective, was unlike anyone he'd encountered. Most warriors came to martial arts seeking power, glory, or revenge. Bruce seemed to be seeking something else entirely. Understanding. He approached combat like a scientist studying a new phenomenon, cataloging every variable, testing every hypothesis. But underneath that analytical exterior, Ken had felt something else during their fight. Something desperate and dangerous and utterly human. A man terrified of his own strength. Ken had spent his entire life learning to balance power with control, technique with instinct. He recognized the same struggle in Bruce, amplified to an almost pathological degree. Tomorrow would be interesting, because if there was one person who could teach a control freak to embrace the chaos of true combat, it was Ryu, the wandering warrior who'd spent decades learning to master the killing intent that lived in his soul. If anyone could help Bruce reconcile his fear of power with his need for it would be him. Ken just hoped the lesson didn't break Bruce in the process, because Metro City had enough broken fighters already. The safe house Chun-Li brought Bruce to was a well-maintained apartment in Metro City's diplomatic quarter. Secure, equipped with surveillance countermeasures, and most importantly, untraceable through normal channels. The healer, an elderly woman named Lin who asked no questions and worked with practiced efficiency, had confirmed Ken's assessment. 2 cracked ribs, extensive soft tissue damage, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from pushing past human limits. You have the pain tolerance of someone who's been injured many times, Lin observed as she applied a salve that smelled of herbs and something else. Chai-infused medicine, Bruce suspected. But pain tolerance and healing are different things. Your body needs rest. How long? Bruce asked. 72 hours minimum for the ribs to stabilize. 2 weeks for full recovery. She wrapped his torso with specialized bandages. Though given your metabolic rate, perhaps 10 days if you're careful. After Lin left, Bruce found himself alone with Chun-Li in the safe house's main room. She'd brewed tea, a gesture of hospitality that felt oddly normal given the circumstances. Thank you, Bruce said, accepting the cup, for arranging the healer and for the introduction to Ken. You did well against him, Chun-Li said, settling into a chair across from him. Most fighters can't last 3 minutes against Ken Masters when he's actually trying. You lasted over 10. He was holding back significantly. True. But you adapted quickly. That's rare. She sipped her tea, studying him with those sharp, investigative eyes. Now, before we go any further, I need the truth. Who are you really, Bruce? And why are you in Metro City? Bruce had been expecting this conversation. He'd spent the past hour deciding how much to reveal. Complete honesty was impossible. Explaining dimensional travel would make him sound insane. But complete deception would destroy any trust he'd built. "I'm a detective," he said, carefully. "From far away, very far away. I came to Metro City pursuing a case, but I got separated from my resources, my contacts, everything that made me effective." "Separated how?" "Let's just say I'm operating in unfamiliar territory." Bruce met her eyes. "I can't give you details without sounding like I've lost my mind, but I can tell you this. I've spent my entire adult life fighting organized crime. I've dismantled trafficking rings, brought down corrupt officials, and stopped terrorists from destroying cities. It's what I do, who I am." Chun-Li listened without interruption, her expression neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's the most elaborate non-answer I've ever heard," she finally said. "But oddly, I believe you." She set down her tea. "I've been tracking criminals since I was a child, Bruce. My father was murdered by Shadaloo when I was young. I spent my entire life hunting his killer, a man named M. Bison who weaponized human suffering and called it power." Bruce heard the pain in her voice, carefully controlled but still present. He knew that kind of pain intimately. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I don't want your sympathy. I want you to understand why I do this." She leaned forward. "Shadaloo is officially gone. Bison's dead. For real this time. But his organization left scars across the world. Remnant factions are still active, still hurting people. And I won't let them rebuild what we destroyed." "Which is where I come in," Bruce said, understanding the implicit offer. "You've already proven you can gather intelligence and handle yourself in combat. Ken confirmed you have Chai potential, and most importantly," her expression hardened, "you fight like someone who understands that violence should be a last resort, not a first choice. That's a rare quality. You want me to help with your investigation." "I want to know if I can trust you," Chun-Li corrected. "The intelligence you gave me about Shadaloo operations was accurate. Too accurate for a random newcomer to have gathered in 3 days. So either you're an exceptionally good detective, or you're connected to Shadaloo in ways that make you an enemy." Bruce appreciated her directness. No games. No political maneuvering. Just straight talk between two people who dedicated their lives to justice. "I'm not connected to Shadaloo," he said firmly. "But you're right that I gathered intelligence faster than normal. I'm trained in surveillance, pattern recognition, and criminal psychology. I spent my first 2 days in Metro City mapping the city's criminal infrastructure, identifying key players, and analyzing operational patterns. The underground fights were reconnaissance, a way to establish presence while gathering real-time intel on the players. It's not normal detective work. That's intelligence operative training. I've had unique mentors." Bruce chose his words carefully. "I was trained by some of the world's most dangerous people. Not because I wanted to be dangerous, but because I needed to understand danger to fight it." Chun-Li absorbed this. "You sound like Ryu. He sought out the most lethal martial artists on the planet and learned everything they'd teach him. Not for power's sake, but to understand the nature of combat itself. Then maybe he'll understand what I'm trying to do here." "Maybe." She pulled out a tablet, displaying a map of Metro City with various markers. "All right, Bruce. Here's what I know about current Shadaloo activity. 3 major cells, each focusing on different operations. The one you identified, weapon smuggling, is Cell Alpha. They're moving psycho-power enhancers and Chai disruption technology through the underground fight circuits." Bruce leaned forward, his detective's mind immediately engaging with the data. "Who's running the operation?" "A former Shadaloo officer named Vega, not the Spanish narcissist with the claw. That Vega's dead. This is one of Bison's mid-level commanders who survived the organization's collapse. He's consolidating power by offering enhanced combat drugs to fighters desperate for an edge. And the other cells. Cell Beta is human trafficking, specifically kidnapping fighters with strong chi potential to create super soldiers, led by a woman who calls herself the Weaver. We don't have visual identification yet. That's a terror tactic, Bruce observed. Targeting the martial arts community creates fear, which disrupts resistance and makes recruitment easier. Classic destabilization strategy. Chun-Li nodded, clearly pleased by his analysis. Cell Gamma is the most concerning. They're researching something called Psycho Power 2.0, trying to replicate Bison's abilities without requiring a host body. If they succeed, you'd have an organization that can mass-produce dictators, Bruce finished grimly. He'd seen similar scenarios in Gotham. Ra's al Ghul's attempts to create a sustainable league of shadows, the Court of Owls Talon program. Who's leading that cell? Unknown. But they've been recruiting scientists, stealing research data, and conducting experiments in hidden facilities. We've shut down 2 labs, but intelligence suggests at least 3 more are active. Bruce studied the map, his tactical mind already formulating approaches. The cells are interconnected. Weapons fund the research. Trafficking provides test subjects. It's a closed-loop system designed to be resilient against targeted strikes. Exactly. Which is why Interpol hasn't been able to dismantle them. We shut down one operation, the others compensate. It's like fighting a hydra. Then you need to strike all 3 simultaneously, Bruce said. Cut off the funding, rescue the prisoners, and destroy the research before they can rebuild. But that requires perfect intelligence, tactical coordination, and the ability to handle enhanced combatants. Which is why I need World Warrior support, Chun-Li said. Ryu, Ken, Guile, fighters who can handle psycho power users, but they're spread across the globe dealing with other threats. I've been working this case mostly alone for 6 months. Bruce understood that burden. He'd spent 15 years as Gotham's sole protector, carrying the weight of an entire city's safety on his shoulders. I can help, he said. I'm good at infiltration, intelligence gathering, and tactical planning. And once I understand chi manipulation, I can handle the enhanced combatants. That's a big once, Chun-Li cautioned. Chi mastery takes years. I'm a fast learner. She smiled slightly. Ken said the same thing. He also said you have the potential but need to let go of control. Think you can do that? Bruce was quiet for a moment, remembering the flash of power he'd felt during the fight. That pulse of energy, raw and unfocused, responding to need. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm willing to try. Good, because tomorrow at dawn, you're meeting Ryu at Mount Senki, about 40 kilometers outside the city. It's where he trains when he's in the region. And Bruce? Her expression grew serious. Ryu doesn't teach technique. He teaches philosophy. He's going to push you to confront whatever's holding you back. It won't be comfortable. I'm aware. Are you? Chun-Li stood, preparing to leave. Ken fights with passion. I fight for justice. Guile fights for duty. Every warrior has their reason, their spirit that fuels their chi. Ryu's spent decades trying to find his, battling something called Satsui no Hado, the surge of murderous intent. He's the perfect teacher for you because he understands what it means to fear your own power. Bruce felt his chest tighten. She'd identified the core issue with disturbing accuracy. What if I can't overcome it? He asked quietly. Then you'll remain a brilliant tactician with good technique, Chun-Li said. Which might be enough for some fights. But if you go up against a real psycho power, user, someone like what Bison was, you'll die. Simple as that. She headed for the door, then paused. Get some rest, Bruce. Tomorrow changes everything. After she left, Bruce sat alone in the safe house, his mind processing the conversation. He'd gained an ally, maybe even a friend, but also a deeper understanding of the stakes. This world didn't have room for half measures. Either he evolved into a true Chai warrior, or he'd become a liability to everyone he was trying to help. The question was whether he could tear down 30 years of carefully constructed control and embrace the chaos underneath. In Gotham, control had been his armor against madness. Every tragedy, every loss, every moment of rage had been channeled into precise, calculated action. Batman was the product of absolute discipline triumphing over absolute pain. But here, that discipline was a cage, and Ryu was offering to break it open. Bruce touched his ribs gingerly. The pain was manageable. He'd fought through worse. But Lynn's warning about needing rest was sound medical advice, which he was going to ignore, because he'd never rested when there was work to be done. He pulled out the laptop he'd stolen, accessing the encrypted files Chun-Li had shared. Shadaloo's operational structure, known associates, facility locations, information that would take him weeks to gather through surveillance. She'd trusted him with it after one conversation. That trust felt heavier than any physical burden. Bruce worked through the night, cross-referencing data, building psychological profiles, identifying patterns that might reveal hidden connections. It was familiar work, the kind he'd done 10,000 times in the Batcave, hunting Gotham's monsters. But as dawn approached, his mind kept drifting back to the moment in Ken's dojo when he'd felt that pulse of energy. Not controlled, not calculated, just there, responding to need like a living thing. Chi, the power that could make him effective in this world, or destroy him if he couldn't master it. At 5 a.m., Bruce closed the laptop and prepared for the journey to Mount Senki. His ribs protested every movement, but pain was just information. It told him he was alive, that he could still fight. He gathered the few possessions he'd acquired. Combat clothes, basic supplies, the encrypted communicator Chun-Li had given him. And for the first time since arriving in this world, Bruce Wayne allowed himself to feel something other than calculated control. Hope. Maybe he could adapt. Maybe he could learn to fight in this world's way without losing who he was. Or maybe he'd discover that Bruce Wayne and Batman were incompatible with the philosophy required for Chai mastery. Either way, he'd know by sunset, because Ryu didn't accept students who weren't ready to be broken down and rebuilt. And Bruce had been holding himself together through sheer will for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to simply be. Time to remember, or time to shatter. Mount Senki wasn't technically a mountain, more of a large hill with a sacred shrine at its peak. But the climb was brutal enough that Bruce's injured ribs felt like they were being stabbed with hot knives by the time he reached the summit. Ryu waited at the shrine entrance, sitting in perfect seiza position, his white jai immaculate despite the morning dew. His eyes were closed, his breathing so controlled it was nearly imperceptible. Bruce approached quietly, not wanting to disturb what was clearly deep meditation. But Ryu spoke without opening his eyes. "You're injured. 2 cracked ribs, extensive bruising, muscular micro-tears throughout your upper body. Yet you climbed 2,000 vertical meters in 43 minutes. He opened his eyes, regarding Bruce with calm assessment. Impressive discipline? Foolish judgment? "I've had worse injuries and less time," Bruce said, settling into a standing position that minimized rib pain. "I don't doubt it." Ryu stood with fluid grace. "Chun-Li contacted me. She says you need to understand Chi, but I think you need something else first." "What's that?" "To understand why you're fighting." Bruce tensed. "I fight to stop criminals, to protect innocents too." "Those are what you fight for," Ryu interrupted. "Not why. The distinction matters." He gestured to the shrine behind him, ancient wood and stone weathered by centuries. "This shrine is dedicated to warriors who fell in battle. Not heroes, not villains, just warriors who fought with every fiber of their being and left their spirits here." He walked to the edge of the summit, looking out over the valley below where Metro City sprawled like a concrete beast. "I've been walking the earth for most of my life," Ryu continued, "seeking to master my art. I've fought in tournaments, in street battles, in wars. I've defeated champions and nearly been killed by novices who had nothing to lose. And every fight taught me the same lesson. Technique without spirit is hollow. Power without purpose is destruction." "I have purpose," Bruce said. "Do you?" Ryu turned to face him. "Or do you have obligation, duty imposed on yourself because of trauma you haven't processed?" Bruce felt anger flash through him, hot and immediate. "You don't know anything about me. I know you fight like a man running from himself," Ryu said calmly. "Every strike calculated to minimize risk. Every defensive move designed to maintain control. You're not fighting to win, you're fighting not to lose. There's a difference. Control keeps people alive. Control prevents you from truly living." Ryu settled into a fighting stance. "Chun-Li asked me to teach you Chi. I agreed, but not because I think you need power. I agreed because I think you need to understand what you're afraid of." "I'm not afraid." "Liar. No malice in the word, just statement of fact. You're terrified. I can sense it in your Chi, trapped, coiled so tightly it's strangling itself. You've built a cage around your power and convinced yourself it's armor." Bruce's fists clenched. This wanderer had known him for 5 minutes and was dissecting him with surgical precision. "What do you want from me?" Bruce asked, his voice harder than intended. "I want you to fight me with everything you have," Ryu said. "Not with technique, not with tactics, with yourself. The real self you've been suppressing for so long you've forgotten what it feels like." "That's not how I fight." "Then you'll lose." Ryu's hands began to glow with blue chi. "And maybe losing is exactly what you need." He attacked, not with Ken's explosive aggression or the testing strikes Bruce expected. Ryu moved like water given form, fluid, inevitable, impossible to predict. His first strike was a palm thrust aimed at Bruce's sternum. Bruce slipped it, countered with a nerve strike to Ryu's elbow. Ryu flowed around it like the strike didn't exist, transitioned into a low sweep. Bruce jumped, aimed a descending elbow at Ryu's exposed back. Ryu rolled forward, came up with a spinning back fist that Bruce barely blocked. They separated, circling. Bruce's ribs were screaming, but he ignored the pain. He'd fought through worse. "Good technique," Ryu observed. "Wasted potential." He attacked again, this time with chi-enhanced speed. A combination of strikes that seemed to come from impossible angles simultaneously. Bruce defended desperately, his training allowing him to read the attacks milliseconds before they landed. But reading and countering were different things. Ryu's chi enhancement gave him speed that Bruce's pure technique couldn't match. A punch slipped through Bruce's guard, struck his injured ribs. Pain exploded through his torso. Bruce stumbled back, gasping. Ryu didn't press the advantage, just stood there, hands glowing, waiting. "Why aren't you using your chi?" Ryu asked. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. Ken told me you manifested small pulses during your fight. Your body knows how to channel energy. Your mind won't let it." "Because it's not controlled," Bruce said through gritted teeth. "It's chaotic, unpredictable." "It's alive," Ryu corrected. Chi is the manifestation of your life force, your spirit given physical form. It responds to emotion, to need, to truth. You can't calculate it any more than you can calculate love or fear. You have to feel it. I can't. Why not? Because... Bruce stopped himself, the words catching in his throat. Because if he felt, really felt, without the armor of control, he'd have to confront everything he'd been running from for 30 years. The grief, the rage, the helplessness of an 8-year-old boy watching his parents die. "There it is," Ryu said softly. "The wound, the reason you fight with a cage around your spirit." Bruce's hands were shaking. He forced them still through pure will. "I'm not here for therapy," he said coldly. "I'm here to learn Chi manipulation." "You can't learn Chi without confronting your spirit." Ryu's expression held something like compassion. "I understand your fear, Bruce. I've spent my entire life battling something called Satsui no Hado, the surge of murderous intent. It's a power that lives inside me, constantly whispering that I could end any fight instantly if I just surrendered to its darkness." "Then you understand why control is necessary." "I understand why you think it's necessary," Ryu corrected. "But true mastery isn't about suppressing your darkness. It's about acknowledging it, understanding it, and choosing not to let it control you. That's the difference between us and the monsters." He powered down his chi, settled back into a neutral stance. "I'm going to make you an offer," Ryu said. "Train with me for 7 days, not to learn techniques. You already know more fighting styles than I could teach, but to learn to access your Chi. If after 7 days you still can't manifest it, I'll tell Chun-Li that you're not ready." "Fair?" Bruce considered. 7 days was a massive time investment when Shadaloo was active. But without Chi, he was operating at a fraction of this world's power level. "What does the training involve?" he asked. "Meditation, combat, suffering." Ryu's lips quirked slightly. "Mostly suffering. I'm going to push you past your limits, break through your defenses, and force you to feel things you've spent your life avoiding. It won't be pleasant. I can handle pain. Physical pain is the easy part." Ryu walked to the shrine, pulled out 2 simple meals wrapped in cloth. He offered one to Bruce. "The hard part is emotional pain, spiritual pain, the kind that comes from facing who you really are underneath all the armor." Bruce accepted the meal, rice, vegetables, simple but nutritious. They ate in silence, watching the sun climb higher over Metro City. "Why are you helping me?" Bruce finally asked. "Because I see myself in you," Ryu said. "A warrior who's afraid of his own strength, who fights not because he loves it, but because he can't stop, who's built his entire identity around being stronger, faster, more controlled than everyone else because he's terrified of what happens if he's not." Every word landed like a physical blow. "I spent 20 years running from Satsui no Hado," Ryu continued. "Convinced that if I acknowledged the darkness inside me, I'd become a monster. My master, Guken, tried to teach me balance, but I didn't listen. I thought I could win through pure discipline. What changed? I nearly killed Ken." Ryu's voice was flat, but Bruce heard the pain underneath. "We were sparring, and I let the Satsui no Hado surface for just a moment. It nearly destroyed everything. My oldest friend, my brother in all but blood, almost died because I couldn't control my own power." "So you learned control?" "No, I learned acceptance." Ryu met Bruce's eyes. "The Satsui no Hado is still there. I feel it every time I fight, but I've stopped trying to suppress it. Instead, I acknowledge it, thank it for its strength, and choose not to let it dominate me. That choice, made every single day, sometimes every single moment, that's what separates a warrior from a killer." Bruce absorbed this. It was uncomfortably close to his own struggle with anger, with the rage that had driven him to become Batman. "What if I can't make that choice?" he asked quietly. "Then you're already lost," Ryu said. "But I don't think you are. Ken saw something in you worth teaching. Chun-Li trusted you with her investigation. I sense potential in your Chi. You're not lost. You're just trapped." He stood, brushing off his GI. "So we're going to set you free. Starting now." The training was exactly as brutal as promised. Ryu began with meditation, 3 hours of sitting in Caesar position on cold stone, focusing on breathing and nothing else. For someone like Bruce, whose mind never stopped analyzing and planning, it was torture. "Your mind is a weapon," Ryu said, pacing around Bruce like a drill. Sergeant. But right now, it's a weapon pointed at yourself. Every thought is a calculation. Every sensation gets analyzed. You're not present in your own body. You're observing it from a distance. That's how I maintain focus. That's how you avoid feeling. Ryu tapped Bruce's chest, right over the heart. Chi comes from here. Not the brain. The heart. The gut. The parts of you that respond without thinking. You need to stop thinking and start being. Easy to say. Impossibly hard to do. After meditation came combat, not sparring, pure offense and defense drills. Ryu would attack with increasing speed and power, and Bruce had to defend without countering. Just pure reaction, no strategy. It was infuriating. Every instinct Bruce had was to analyze the pattern, predict the next strike, formulate a counter-strategy. But Ryu changed patterns randomly, specifically to prevent calculation. "Stop thinking," Ryu shouted, landing a chi-enhanced strike that sent Bruce sprawling. "React! Trust your body!" Bruce rose, blood trickling from his nose. His ribs were agony. His muscles screamed. But he settled back into defensive stance. Ryu attacked again. Bruce tried to just react and got punched in the face. "Better," Ryu said, which Bruce didn't understand since he'd just gotten hit. You hesitated less that time. Still thinking, but slightly slower. Progress. They continued for hours. Bruce lost count of how many times he got hit. His body was a collection of bruises and pain, but gradually, incrementally, he started to understand what Ryu wanted. Don't predict, just respond. Don't calculate, just move. Don't control. Just be. It went against 30 years of training, but in brief flashes, moments so short Bruce almost missed them. He felt it, that pulse of energy Ken had mentioned, chi trying to manifest in response to need. And every time it appeared, Ryu smiled. "There," he said after Bruce blocked a particularly fast combination on pure instinct. "Did you feel it? That warmth in your chest?" Bruce nodded, breathing hard. He had felt it, like a furnace igniting briefly before his conscious mind shut it down. "That's your chi trying to emerge," Ryu explained. "Your body knows how to channel it, but your mind is terrified of losing control, so it suppresses the energy before it can fully manifest. We need to break that suppression." "How?" "By making you so exhausted you can't maintain the mental walls anymore." Ryu settled back into fighting stance. Again. They fought until sunset. By the end, Bruce could barely stand. Every muscle trembled with fatigue. His vision was blurry from exhaustion and pain. But that warmth in his chest, that pulse of chi was appearing more frequently, lasting longer. Finally, Ryu called a halt. "Enough for today," he said, offering Bruce a hand up. "You did well." "I got hit about 300 times, Bruce said through split lips. "Yes, and you got back up 300 times. That's what matters." Ryu led him to a small shelter near the shrine, barely more than a roof and walls, but it had sleeping mats and medical supplies. "Rest, we start again at dawn." Bruce collapsed onto a mat, his body grateful for horizontal existence. Ryu moved around the shelter, preparing a simple meal and herbal medicine for Bruce's injuries. "Ryu," Bruce said quietly, "what you said about Satsui no Hado, about choosing every day not to let it control you. How do you do it?" Ryu was quiet for a moment, grinding herbs into paste. "I remember why I fight," he finally said. "Not to prove I'm strong, not to defeat enemies, but to perfect my art, to become the best version of myself. When I focus on that, on growth rather than domination, the Satsui no Hado's voice gets quieter." "Does it ever go away completely?" "No." Ryu applied the herbal paste to Bruce's worst bruises. The medicine had a warming effect, probably chi enhanced. "It's part of me, and I've learned that's okay. The darkness doesn't make me evil. What I choose to do with it determines who I am. Bruce thought about that as exhaustion pulled him towards sleep. For 30 years, he'd believed that the rage inside him was something to be suppressed, controlled, locked away. That Batman was a leash on Bruce Wayne's anger, but maybe he'd had it backwards. Maybe Batman was the anger allowed to surface in controlled doses. Maybe Bruce Wayne was the suppression, and maybe neither approach was healthy. As consciousness faded, Bruce felt that warmth in his chest again. Chi responding to his emotional vulnerability, not calculated, not controlled, just there, alive, real. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Bruce Wayne fell asleep without armor and dreamed of light instead of darkness. Juri Han watched the mountain through high-powered binoculars, a smile playing across her lips. She'd been tracking Bruce, the mysterious fighter who'd appeared from nowhere, for 4 days now. Following him had been interesting. Following him to Ryu's training ground had been fascinating. Training with the wandering Boy Scout, she murmured to herself. How adorable. Juri had history with Ryu. They'd fought twice. Once during Shadaloo's reign, once after. Both fights had ended in draws, though Juri liked to think she'd won on style points. Ryu was powerful, disciplined, boring as hell, everything she wasn't. But this Bruce character, he was something different. She'd watched his fights in the underground, analyzed his technique, studied the way he moved like every environment was a potential battlefield. And she'd recognized something familiar in his eyes. Trauma, weaponized into lethality. Takes one to know one. Juri had been trained by Shadaloo after they'd murdered her family. They'd implanted the Feng Shui engine in her eye, a device that enhanced her chi manipulation and gave her abilities beyond normal human limits. They'd turned her into a weapon and expected gratitude. Instead, she destroyed them from within, betrayed Bison at a critical moment, helped orchestrate Shadaloo's downfall not because she was good, but because she hated being controlled. And now she was, what, free, bored? Hunting Shadaloo remnants for entertainment, all of the above. But Bruce represented something new, a challenge, a puzzle, and Juri loved puzzles. She descended the mountain using techniques that made Ryu's students look like amateurs. Feng Shui engine-enhanced speed let her cover distance impossibly fast, and her training in Taekwondo gave her the leg strength to leap between outcroppings that would kill normal humans. She reached the shrine as twilight fell. Ryu was meditating. Predictable. Bruce was collapsed on a sleeping mat, covered in bruises. Adorable. The perfect teacher-student scene. Time to ruin it. Knock, knock, Juri called out cheerfully, stepping into the shrine's entrance. Anyone home? Ryu's eyes opened, immediately tracking her position. Juri, what are you doing here? Can't a girl visit an old friend? She sauntered forward, hips swaying. Her Feng Shui engine glowed purple in the dim light, a deliberate show of power. Heard you picked up a stray, wanted to meet him. Bruce was already moving despite his injuries, rolling off the mat into a defensive crouch. Good instincts. She liked that. Leave, Ryu said simply, standing. Bruce is my student. I won't let you interfere with his training. Interfere? I'm hurt. Juri pressed a hand to her chest in mock offense. I just want to say hello, maybe spar a little. Test the new guy's mettle, unless... Her smile widened. You're afraid I'll break him? He's injured. He's standing up, looking ready to fight despite being injured, Juri countered. Seems like he can make his own choices. She looked directly at Bruce. How about it, mystery man? Want to dance with someone who won't pull their punches like Mr. Honor and Discipline here? Bruce's eyes were calculating, analyzing. She could practically see the threat assessment happening in real time. Studying her stance, her power level, looking for weaknesses. I'm in no condition to fight, Bruce said carefully. His voice was controlled, but she heard the underlying tension. He recognized danger. Smart boy. That's what makes it interesting, Jury said. She settled into her fighting stance, weight on her back leg, feng shui engine pulsing. You world warriors are always at your best, fully rested, perfectly prepared. Boring. I want to see what you're made of when you're broken. Jury, enough, Ryu said, his own chai beginning to glow. I'm asking you politely to leave. And what if I don't feel like being polite? She spun, her leg lashing out at Bruce with feng shui, engine-enhanced speed. Bruce dodged, barely. The kick missed his face by centimeters, and she felt him analyze the trajectory even as he moved. Fast, she purred. Even half dead. I like it. I don't want to fight you, Bruce said, hands up but not quite in guard position, trying to de-escalate. Nobody ever wants to fight me, Jury said, attacking again. They do it anyway. This time she targeted his injured ribs with a spinning heel kick. Bruce blocked with his forearm, but she saw him wince. Good. Pain meant he was still human under all that technique. Ryu moved to intervene, but Jury had anticipated that. She launched a chai-enhanced kick toward his head, forcing him to defend, then spun back toward Bruce with a combination that was pure aggression. Bruce defended desperately, his technique still flawless despite exhaustion. But flawless technique meant predictable patterns, and Jury specialized in chaos. She feinted high, struck low, acted like she was going for his head, nailed his injured ribs instead, every strike designed not to defeat him quickly, but to test his limits. And she saw those limits approaching fast. Bruce's breathing was labored, his movements were slowing, blood was seeping through the bandages on his torso, but his eyes. Those eyes didn't show fear or pain. They showed calculation. He was studying her even while getting pummeled, cataloging her techniques, looking for patterns. You're not fighting, Jury observed, blocking one of his rare counterstrikes. Just defending. Why? I told you, I don't want to fight you. Liar. She spun into an axe kick that he barely dodged. You're holding back, afraid of what happens if you really cut loose. What's the matter, mystery man? Scared of your own power? She saw it then, a flash of anger in his eyes. Just a moment, but it was there. There we go, she breathed. Show me that. Show me the real you. Bruce's next defensive move was harder, more aggressive. He was losing control of his emotional state, and Jury could sense his chi responding, that warm pulse becoming stronger. Perfect. She pressed the advantage, not with pure offense, but with psychological warfare. You fight like you're terrified, like if you really let go, something terrible would happen. That's boring, Bruce. Nobody's that disciplined without being broken inside. Stop, Ryu warned, his voice hard. Jury, this isn't training. This is cruelty. Cruelty, she laughed. I'm doing him a favor. Ryu, you're too nice. You try to guide people gently into understanding their chi. But some people, she landed a kick that sent Bruce stumbling, need to be forced to confront what they're running from. Bruce caught himself, and when he looked up, Jury saw something new in his expression. Rage, carefully controlled, desperately suppressed, but there, and his hands were glowing faintly with blue energy. Oh, Jury said, genuinely delighted. There it is, the fire underneath all that ice. Come on, Bruce, hit me like you mean it. I'm not going to... She kicked him in the ribs. Hard. Bruce gasped, went down on one knee. The blue glow around his hands intensified. Hit. Me, Jury demanded. No. She kicked him again. This time, Bruce caught her leg. His hand, wreathed in blue chi energy, gripped her calf with strength that surprised her. And then he threw her. Jury flew backward 10 feet, landed in a roll, came up laughing. Yes, that's what I wanted to see. Bruce stood, breathing hard, his hands still glowing. But the light was flickering, his conscious mind trying to suppress it even as his body desperately needed the power. "You're at a crossroads, mystery man," Jury said, settling back into stance. "You can keep clinging to that precious control and die the first time you face a real threat, or you can embrace what you really are and maybe survive long enough to matter in this world." "That's not wisdom," Ryu said, stepping between them. "That's poison. Chi-born. From rage is corrupted chi. Satsui no Hado's path. I won't let you push him toward that." "Why not?" Jury challenged. "You've been walking that path your whole life. You're not dead. Maybe the great Ryu isn't the only one who can balance darkness and light." "The difference," Ryu said quietly, dangerously, "is that I spent decades learning that balance. Bruce has been here 5 days. Pushing him before he's ready will destroy him, or make him stronger than you ever could." They stared at each other, two warriors with fundamentally opposing philosophies. Jury thrived on chaos and pain. Ryu sought balance and enlightenment. Neither was wrong exactly, but both were absolutely certain they were right. Bruce's voice cut through the tension. "Both of you, stop." They turned to look at him. He was still injured, still exhausted, but he was standing straight, his expression cold and controlled despite the fading chi energy around his hands. "I appreciate the concern, Ryu. And I understand your methods, Jury. But I'm not a child to be fought over." He looked at Jury directly. "You're right that I'm holding back. You're right that I'm afraid of my own power, but forcing me to access it through rage isn't growth. It's desperation. Sometimes desperation is exactly what you need," Jury countered. "Maybe, but I've spent 15 years learning to channel anger into purpose. I'm not going to throw that away because you want to see me fight at full strength." He turned to Ryu. "And you're right that I need to approach this carefully. But Jury has a point. Your methods are slow, and I don't know how much time I have." Ryu nodded slowly. "What are you proposing?" "A compromise. I'll continue training with you, learning to access Chi through meditation and controlled combat. But," he glanced at Jury, "I'll also spar with people who won't hold back, who'll push me to my limits and force me to adapt quickly." "That's dangerous," Ryu said. "Everything here is dangerous," Bruce replied. "At least this way, I'm choosing the danger instead of having it choose me." Jury considered him for a long moment, then smiled. Not her cruel smile. Something more genuine. "I like you, mystery man. You've got spine." She powered down her feng shui engine. "All right, I'll play nice. For now. But next time we meet, I want a real fight. Full power. No holding back. Deal?" "If I survive that long," Bruce said dryly. "Oh, you will. You're too stubborn to die." She turned to leave, then paused. "Word of advice, Bruce. The thing you're most afraid of, that's usually the thing you need most. Whatever you're running from, it's catching up. Better to turn and face it before it hits you from behind." With that, she vanished into the darkness, moving with supernatural speed. Ryu was quiet for a long moment. "She's not wrong," he finally said, "about fear being the obstacle. But she's also reckless and dangerous. Are you sure you want to walk the path she's suggesting?" "I'm not walking her path," Bruce said, sitting down heavily. His ribs were screaming. "But I'm not walking yours exclusively either. I need to find my own way, something between absolute control and total chaos." "That's a narrow path," Ryu warned. "I've been walking narrow paths my entire life." Bruce looked at his hands where the chi glow had been. "Ryu, when I threw Jury, I wasn't thinking. I just reacted, and the chi came instantly." "Because you were angry. Emotion is the fastest path to chi manifestation, but anger-fueled chi is unstable and corrupting." "What if it doesn't have to be?" Bruce asked. "What if I can learn to access that reactive state without the corruption? Channel the energy without the rage?" Ryu sat down beside him, considering. "That's an interesting theory. Most warriors either suppress emotion entirely, like I tried to do, or embrace it and risk corruption? You're suggesting a third option, acknowledging emotion without being controlled by it. It's what I've done my entire life, Bruce said quietly. I've spent 15 years learning to use fear, pain, and anger as tools rather than letting them use me. Maybe I can apply that same discipline to chi. Or maybe you'll fall into Satsui no Hado's trap without even realizing it. That's why I need you, Bruce said, to watch for the warning signs, to pull me back if I go too far. Ryu was silent, clearly weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. All right, we'll try it your way. But the moment I see corruption taking root, we stop immediately. Agreed? Agreed. They sat in companionable silence as night fell completely. In the distance, Metro City glowed like a constellation brought to Earth, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Ryu, Bruce said eventually, thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. Jury's right about one thing. You're approaching a crossroads. The choices you make in the next few days will define what kind of warrior you become. Ryu stood, offering Bruce a hand. Come, let's get those ribs properly treated. Tomorrow we begin a new phase of training. What phase? Emotional combat. I'm going to force you to fight while experiencing every emotion you've been suppressing. Joy, fear, sadness, rage, all of it. If you can maintain your discipline while feeling everything instead of nothing, you'll have found your path. Bruce accepted the hand, let Ryu pull him up. That sounds horrible. It will be, Ryu agreed, but so is living in a cage of your own making. Better to suffer temporarily than to remain imprisoned forever. As they returned to the shelter, Bruce reflected on the day's events. He'd been attacked by someone faster and stronger than most opponents he'd faced. He'd accessed chi through reactive anger, and he'd made a choice to walk his own path rather than following someone else's blueprint. In Gotham, Batman had been his path, his identity, his purpose. Here, he was just Bruce Wayne, a detective trying to survive in a world that demanded he evolve beyond everything he thought he knew. The question was whether he'd emerge from this crucible stronger, or whether he'd discover that some cages existed for a reason. The third day of Bruce's emotional combat training, the sky turned crimson. Ryu stopped mid-instruction, his entire body going rigid. Bruce had learned to read his teacher's tells over the past week. This was primal fear, instantly suppressed but unmistakable. Get behind me, Ryu said quietly. Now. Bruce moved without question. He'd sparred with Ryu enough to know the man didn't scare easily. The air itself seemed to thicken, oppressive and malevolent. Then a figure materialized at the shrine's entrance. Not walked, materialized, as if reality had simply decided he belonged there. 7 feet of walking death. Skin darkened by years, channeling corrupted chi, hair wild and red as spilled blood. The kanji for heaven, Tian, burned into his back like a brand. But it was his eyes that made Bruce's tactical mind scream warnings. Completely devoid of humanity, holding only the promise of violence perfected into art. Akuma, Ryu said, his voice steady despite the fear Bruce sensed. Why are you here? I felt a disturbance. Akuma's voice was gravel and thunder. A warrior attempting to walk the path between light and darkness. I came to see if he deserved such ambition. His gaze fixed on Bruce with the intensity of a predator selecting prey, or if he is merely another pretender who will die screaming. Bruce's every instinct told him to run. This wasn't a fighter. This was a force of nature wearing human skin. He's my student, Ryu said, positioning himself protectively. Under my guidance. Your guidance has made you weak, Ryu. Akuma's expression twisted into something that might have been disappointment. You cling to your master's teachings, rejecting the Satsui no Hado even as it burns within you. You could be invincible, yet you choose restraint. He spat the last word like poison. I choose humanity over power. Then you choose death. Akuma's attention returned to Bruce. But perhaps your student is wiser. Step forward, detective. Let me see what you are made of. Bruce didn't move. How do you know I'm a detective? I know many things. I know you come from a world where you were feared. I know you built your strength on the corpses of your failures. I know you carry darkness like a second skin. Akuma smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. I know you are terrified that if you embrace true power, you will become what you hunted. Every word landed like a surgical strike at Bruce's deepest fears. Don't engage with him, Ryu warned. Akuma seeks to corrupt warriors to prove that Satsui no Hado is the only true path. I do not seek to corrupt, Akuma corrected. I seek to reveal. This one already stands at the precipice. I merely wish to see which way he falls. Bruce made a decision that would have horrified Alfred. He stepped out from behind Ryu. If you want to test me, then test me, Bruce said, his voice cold. But I'm not interested in your philosophy. Akuma laughed, a sound like rocks grinding. Philosophy? I offer no philosophy. Only truth. Strength is everything. Control is an illusion. Power without restraint is the only path to transcendence. Then you're no different from the criminals I've spent my life fighting, Bruce said. Tyrants who think might makes right. I've seen what that path leads to. It ends in graves. It ends in glory, Akuma countered. The weak perish, the strong endure. This is the way of nature, of combat, of existence itself. Your precious control is merely fear, disguised as virtue. He settled into a fighting stance that radiated lethal intent. I will give you one strike, Akuma said. Attack me with everything you possess. Hold nothing back. If you can make me acknowledge your strength, I will leave. If you cannot, his smile widened. I will show you what true power feels like before you die. Akuma, no, Ryu pleaded. He's not ready. Then he never will be. Akuma's eyes never left Bruce. Well, detective, will you cower behind your teacher, or will you face me as a warrior? Bruce's mind raced through options. Running was impossible. Akuma moved faster than anything he'd encountered. Talking his way out seemed unlikely. Fighting was suicide, but standing there doing nothing guaranteed death. He thought about the past week, the meditation, the emotional combat training, the brief moments when his chi had manifested. Small, unstable, but there. I'm not a warrior, Bruce said quietly. I'm a detective who learned to fight. But if you're offering me a test, I'll take it. He settled into stance. Not any single martial art, but a fusion of everything he'd learned, from the League of Shadows, from Lady Shiva, from Richard Dragon, from 30 years of brutal education in violence. And underneath the technique, he reached for that warmth in his chest, that pulse of energy Ryu had taught him to acknowledge. Don't force it, Ryu's voice echoed in his memory. Don't calculate it. Just be. Bruce let go of control. Just for an instant, allowed himself to feel instead of think. Fear. Not of Akuma, but of becoming like him, of letting power corrupt him into something monstrous. Rage. At being trapped in this world, at being powerless, at facing an opponent so far beyond him that survival seemed impossible. Grief. For the parents he'd lost, for the life he'd left behind, for the man he might have been if tragedy hadn't forged him into a weapon. And deeper than all of that, beneath the fear and rage and grief, determination. The core of Bruce Wayne that had dragged an 8-year-old boy out of that alley and turned him into something that made Gotham's monsters afraid. The chi erupted, not the faint glow Ken had seen, not the flickering pulses from Ryu's training. This was a wave of blue energy that exploded from Bruce's core, wreathing his entire body in crackling power. He moved, faster than he'd ever moved, stronger than his muscles should allow. Every technique he'd ever learned compressed into a single, perfect strike aimed at Akuma's center mass. A punch that carried 30 years of discipline, rage, and absolute commitment. It connected. For exactly 1 microsecond, Bruce felt hope. Then Akuma's hand caught his fist, stopping it completely. The chi energy dispersed against Akuma's palm like water hitting stone. "Adequate," Akuma said. Then he squeezed. Bruce heard bones cracking before he felt the pain. His hand shattered like glass. The agony was transcendent, beyond anything he'd experienced. Akuma released him. Bruce staggered back, cradling his mangled hand, fighting not to scream. "You manifested chi through emotional honesty," Akuma observed clinically. "Impressive for a novice. But honesty without strength is merely pretty light. You felt everything, fear, rage, determination, and channeled it into a single strike. That strike would have killed most fighters." He stepped closer, and Bruce saw something unexpected in those inhuman eyes. Approval. "But I am not most fighters. I am what you will become if you continue this path. Power purified by complete surrender to combat's truth. And that terrifies you more than death itself." "You're wrong," Bruce gasped through the pain. "I'll never become you." "No?" Akuma's expression was almost pitying. "You already are me. A man who saw the world's cruelty and responded by becoming cruelty's master. The only difference is that I accepted what I became. You still pretend to be something else." He turned to Ryu. "Your student has potential, but he is fractured. One half seeks power, the other fears it. Until he reconciles these halves, he will never transcend mediocrity." "Then teach me to reconcile them," Bruce said through gritted teeth. Both Ryu and Akuma stopped, staring at him. "You dare ask me to teach you?" Akuma's voice was dangerous. "After I shattered your hand? You said I need to reconcile my halves. Fine. Show me how." Bruce stood straighter despite the pain. "You embody complete surrender to power. Ryu embodies complete control. I need to find the path between you. So teach me what that surrender feels like." "Bruce, no," Ryu said urgently. "Akuma's teachings lead to corruption, to Satsui no Hado." "Maybe," Bruce acknowledged. "Or maybe I need to understand both extremes before I can find balance." Akuma studied him for a long moment. Then, shockingly, he laughed. "You have audacity, detective. Shattered hand, facing someone who could kill you with a thought, and you demand teaching." He seemed genuinely amused. "Very well. I will give you one lesson. Not in technique. You have adequate technique. A lesson in truth." He moved faster than Bruce could track, gripped Bruce's shattered hand, and squeezed. The pain went beyond physical. Bruce felt his consciousness fragmenting, his mental defenses crumbling. Every wall he'd built to maintain control was suddenly under assault by pure agony. "This is truth," Akuma said, his voice penetrating Bruce's suffering. "Pain, weakness, mortality, everything you spend your life trying to control, but you cannot control it. You can only endure or break." Bruce tried to maintain discipline, to compartmentalize the pain like he'd been trained. It didn't work. The pain was too vast, too consuming. His technique failed. His mental conditioning failed. Everything that made him Batman failed. And in that failure, something unexpected happened. He stopped fighting the pain, not surrendering to it. That would be Akuma's path. But acknowledging it. Accepting that he was broken, that he was weak, that he was human. And paradoxically, that acceptance brought clarity. The chi returned. Not the explosive burst from before. This was different, calmer, more controlled, but also deeper. It flowed through him like water through cracks in stone, finding paths his conscious mind would never have calculated. The chi concentrated in his shattered hand. Not healing it, that was beyond his current ability, but numbing it, blocking the pain receptors through energy manipulation. Akuma released him, stepping back. His expression was unreadable. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Most warriors either break completely or embrace the pain as fuel for rage. You did neither. You accepted the pain, then used chi to manage it. That is unexpected." Bruce looked at his hand. It was still shattered, bones jutting at wrong angles, already swelling purple. But it didn't hurt. The chi flowing through it had created a temporary anesthetic effect. "This won't last," Akuma observed. "Your chi control is too unstable. In minutes, the pain will return worse than before. But you demonstrated something valuable, the ability to adapt under extreme duress." He turned to leave, then paused. "You asked how to reconcile your halves, Detective. The answer is simple. Stop viewing them as halves. You are not control and chaos. You are not light and darkness. You are both, simultaneously, always. The moment you stop trying to be one or the other is the moment you become whole." "That sounds like philosophy," Bruce said, echoing Akuma's earlier dismissal. Akuma actually smiled. "Perhaps I lied. Perhaps everything is philosophy, combat, power, existence. The question is whether your philosophy serves strength or weakness." He looked back at Ryu. "Continue his training. He may yet become something worthy of true battle, or he may break and become nothing. Either outcome will be educational." Then he was gone, vanishing as abruptly as he'd arrived. Ryu was beside Bruce immediately, examining the shattered hand with a healer's trained eye. "This is bad. Bones need to be set immediately, and you'll need weeks of recovery." "We don't have weeks," Bruce said. His chi-induced numbness was already fading. The pain was returning in waves. "Chun-Li's investigation, Shadaloo remnants, they won't wait for me to heal." "Then you'll fail and die," Ryu said flatly. He produced medical supplies from the shelter. "Or you'll let me help you properly. Recover enough to actually be useful and succeed. Your choice." Bruce knew Ryu was right, but the detective in him hated waiting while criminals operated freely. "How long?" he asked. "With conventional treatment, 6 weeks minimum for the bones to heal enough for light training." "And unconventional treatment?" Ryu hesitated. "There are chi-based healing techniques, advanced methods that can accelerate bone regeneration, but they're dangerous for someone with unstable chi control. You could permanently damage your hand trying to heal it." "What's the success rate?" "If done properly by a master, 90%, if attempted by a novice." Ryu began setting the bones, each movement precise despite Bruce's involuntary flinches. "Maybe 40%. I'll take those odds." "No," Ryu said firmly. "You won't, because I won't teach you a technique that could cripple you permanently." He wrapped the hand in splints with practiced efficiency. "We're going to do this the right way. 3 weeks of healing, accelerated by chi techniques I perform, then gradual strength training. You'll be at 80% in a month. A month is too long. It's not negotiable." Ryu's voice carried absolute authority. "Bruce, Akuma did you a favor today, though not the one he intended. He showed you that rushing toward power without proper foundation leads to catastrophic failure. Your hand is the proof." Bruce wanted to argue, but looking at the mangled mess of his hand, he knew Ryu was right. "Fine," he said quietly. 1 month. But I need to stay useful during recovery. Can I help Chun-Li with intelligence work, strategic planning?" "That I can't stop you from doing," Ryu said. "Just don't try to fight. The moment you stress that hand before it's healed, you'll undo all the progress." As Ryu worked, applying chi-enhanced medicine that would begin the accelerated healing process, Bruce's mind wandered to Akuma's words. "You are both, simultaneously, always." Was that true? Was the solution not to choose between control and chaos, but to embrace that he was inherently both? Batman had been about control, channeling chaos into precise, calculated action, but maybe that had been incomplete. Maybe true mastery required accepting that chaos was part of the equation, not something to be suppressed. The chi flowing through his hand pulsed in agreement, unstable, unpredictable, but alive, like him. "Ryu," Bruce said as exhaustion from the pain and chi expenditure began pulling him toward unconsciousness. "Thank you for everything." "Save your thanks," Ryu said, though his tone was gentle. "The hard part is just beginning. Recovery is slower and more frustrating than training, and Akuma's visit means word is spreading about you. Others will come, some to test you, some to recruit you, some to kill you. You need to be ready." "Story of my life," Bruce murmured, darkness closing in. His last thought before unconsciousness claimed him was of Gotham, of the city he'd left behind, of whether he'd ever see it again or whether Metro City would become his new crusade. Either way, he had work to do, and a shattered hand wouldn't stop him. Nothing ever had. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Bruce had never been good at patience. In Gotham, injuries meant working through them, pushing past pain because crime didn't wait for Batman to recover. But here, with his hand shattered and his chi controlled too unstable to risk further damage, he had no choice but to adapt. Chun-Li had been a lifeline during recovery. She visited the mountain shrine every 3 days, bringing intelligence reports, strategic puzzles, and updates on Shadaloo remnant activity. Bruce couldn't fight, but his detective's mind remained sharp. 3 trafficking victims recovered from a warehouse in the Eastern District, Chun-Li reported during her 5th visit. She spread holographic displays across the shrine's floor, crime scene photos, witness statements, geographic data. "Your analysis about the Weaver's operational pattern was correct. They're focusing on fighters with latent chi potential." Bruce studied the data with his left hand. His right was still in a specialized brace Ryu had designed to accelerate healing. The bones had knitted faster than medically possible thanks to chi-enhanced treatment, but they were still fragile. "The Weaver's not just building an army," Bruce said, pointing to a pattern in the victim demographics. "Look at the age range, 16 to 22. That's not coincidence. They're targeting fighters young enough to be molded, old enough to have developed basic skills." "Child soldiers," Chun-Li said grimly. "Shadaloo's specialty. Worse. Shadaloo used brainwashing and fear. The Weaver is promising power, offering chi enhancement that would take years to achieve naturally. They're turning desperation into loyalty. Can we trace the supply chain? Find where they're getting the enhancement drugs?" Bruce pulled up a different dataset. Financial transactions he'd managed to access through creative hacking. His limited computer resources made it challenging, but not impossible. Here, 3 dummy corporations, purchasing biochemical components, all linked through shell companies to a central buyer. If I had another week and better equipment, I could trace it back to a physical location. "I can get you better equipment," Chun-Li said. "Interpol resources. But it means bringing you into the official investigation, which raises questions I can't fully answer about who you are." Bruce considered. Every instinct said to maintain operational security, but isolation meant ineffectiveness. "What if I consult remotely? Feed you analysis without appearing in official reports?" "That could work." Chun-Li smiled slightly. "You're getting better at this world's politics." "I'm a fast learner when I have to be." Movement at the shrine entrance. Ryu returning from his daily meditation. He nodded to Chun-Li, then examined Bruce's hand with a healer's practiced eye. "Bones are at 70%, he announced, Better than expected. Another week and we can begin light resistance training. He looked at Bruce seriously. But we need to talk about what happens after you're healed. I returned to helping Chun-Li's investigation. That's part of it. But there's a larger question. Ryu settled into Seiza position. Akuma's visit attracted attention. Word has spread through the warrior community that someone is training to walk the path between Satsui no Heido and conventional Chi. Others will come, some out of curiosity, some to challenge you, some to recruit you for their own purposes. Let them come, Bruce said. Bruce, you're not ready for what's coming. Your hand is healing, but your Chi control is still unstable. You can manifest it under extreme stress, but you can't sustain it. In a prolonged fight against a master-level opponent, you'd burn out in minutes. Then teach me to sustain it. Ryu was quiet for a moment. That's what I've been trying to do, but you're fighting yourself every step of the way. Meditation, emotional openness, the mental exercises. You do them, but your heart isn't in it. You're still treating Chai like a tool to be mastered rather than an expression of your spirit. Bruce knew Ryu was right. Despite weeks of training, despite the breakthrough with Akuma, he still approached Chi from a tactical perspective, trying to understand it intellectually rather than embracing it spiritually. I don't know how to be any other way, Bruce admitted quietly. I know, Ryu said, surprising him with the gentleness in his voice. You've spent your entire life building walls between who you are and what you do. Those walls kept you sane in a world that tried to break you, but here, those same walls are holding you back. Chun-Li had been listening quietly. Now she spoke. Bruce, I know something about walls. After my father died, I built my entire life around revenge. Training, investigating, hunting bison. Everything was about making him pay. And I succeeded. I found him, fought him, watched him die. Then you got what you wanted, Bruce said. Did I? Her expression was complicated. I accomplished my goal, but the walls I'd built didn't disappear. I'd spent so long being the woman who hunted Shadaloo that I didn't know who I was without that purpose. I had to learn to be Chun-Li again, not just Interpol agent Chun-Li or Bison's nemesis Chun-Li, just me. Bruce understood that struggle intimately. Batman had consumed Bruce Wayne so completely that sometimes he forgot where one ended and the other began. How did you do it? He asked. Find yourself again. I stopped treating my life like a mission, Chun-Li said. Started doing things that weren't about combat or justice. Taught martial arts to kids, reconnected with old friends, let myself feel joy and sadness and everything between without analyzing it. She smiled. It was terrifying, but it was also freeing. Ryu nodded. That's what I've been trying to teach you, Bruce. Combat is part of life, but it's not all of life. Chi flows strongest when you're connected to everything. Not just the fight, but the world around you, the people you care about, the moments of peace between conflicts. I don't have moments of peace, Bruce said. There's always another case, another threat, another. Because you choose not to have peace, Ryu interrupted. You fill every moment with purpose because stillness forces you to confront things you'd rather avoid. That's not strength, Bruce. That's escape. The words hit like a physical blow. Bruce wanted to argue, to defend his choices, but he couldn't because Ryu was absolutely right. I don't know how to stop, Bruce said finally. The moment I stop, the moment I let myself just be, everything I've been running from catches up. Let it catch up, Ryu said simply. Face it, feel it, survive it. That's the only way forward. Bruce looked at his healing hand. Akuma had shattered it to prove a point about weakness and control. But maybe the real lesson was different. Maybe the hand had to break so Bruce could learn that breaking didn't mean ending. All right, he said quietly. Tell me what to do. Ryu's eyes widened slightly. Apparently he hadn't expected Bruce to actually agree. For the next week, I want you to do absolutely nothing productive. What? No investigation, no analysis, no training, just exist, meditate, watch the sunrise. Talk with me and Chun-Li about things that aren't crime or combat. Let yourself be bored. Let yourself feel whatever comes up without trying to fix it or solve it. That's impossible. It's necessary, Ryu countered. Your mind is a weapon, Bruce, but like any weapon, it needs to be sheathed sometimes. If you keep it drawn constantly, it will cut you to pieces from the inside. Chun-Li stood. I should go. Let you two work this out. She handed Bruce a secure tablet. But take this. If something urgent comes up with the investigation, I'll contact you. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. After she left, Bruce sat in uncomfortable silence with Ryu. The shrine felt simultaneously peaceful and oppressive, a place designed for contemplation, which was exactly what Bruce had spent his life avoiding. I don't know how to do this, he finally said. I know. Ryu stood, walked to the shrine's edge where the mountain overlooked the valley. Come here. Bruce joined him. The view was spectacular. Metro City in the distance, forests and mountains in between, the sky painted in sunset colors. What do you see? Ryu asked. A city. Approximately 3.7 million people based on the urban sprawl, multiple districts, industrial and residential. Crime rates probably correlate with Bruce. Ryu's voice was patient but firm. What do you see? Bruce stopped, looked again. Tried to see the view not as data to be analyzed, but as just a view. Colors, he said haltingly. Orange and purple in the sky, green in the forests, gray in the city. Light starting to appear in windows as people come home from work. What do you feel? I don't. What do you feel? Bruce forced himself to pay attention to his internal state. What did he feel? Anxiety, he admitted. Because I'm not working on the case, because I'm wasting time on this. What else? Frustration. At my hand for taking so long to heal. At myself for getting injured. At you for making me stand here doing nothing. What else? Bruce dug deeper, past the surface emotions to something he rarely acknowledged. Sadness, he said quietly. I miss home. I miss knowing who I am and what I'm supposed to do. There it is, Ryu said. The truth under all the tactics. You're lost, Bruce. Separated from everything familiar. Forced to rebuild yourself from scratch. And that terrifies you because rebuilding means admitting the original structure might have been flawed. Tears threatened. Bruce suppressed them immediately, a reflex so ingrained he didn't even think about it. Don't, Ryu said, somehow sensing the suppression. Let it out. You've been holding everything in for so long you've forgotten how to let go. If I let go, you'll survive, Ryu said firmly. I promise you, Bruce. Whatever you're afraid of feeling, you'll survive it, and on the other side, you'll be stronger. Bruce stood there, fighting the internal war he'd been fighting for 3 decades. Control versus chaos. Strength versus vulnerability. Batman versus Bruce Wayne. And then, for the first time since he was 8 years old, Bruce Wayne let himself cry. Not calculated tears deployed for strategic purposes. Not quiet grief compartmentalized and filed away. Just crying. For his parents, for the life he'd lost. For the man he might have been. For 30 years of pain carried with such discipline that he'd convinced himself it wasn't pain at all. Ryu didn't speak, didn't offer empty comfort, just stood beside him while Bruce finally let the armor crack. It took 20 minutes. When the tears finally stopped, Bruce felt hollowed out, exhausted, vulnerable, and lighter than he'd felt in years. That's the first step, Ryu said quietly. Acknowledging that you're human, that you hurt, That control isn't the same as healing." Bruce nodded, not trusting his voice. They stood there as night fell completely, and Bruce felt something shift inside him. Not fixed. He wasn't naive enough to think one cry session solved 30 years of trauma, but shifted. Like a door opening slightly, letting in air. "Tomorrow," Ryu said, "we begin a different kind of training. Not combat, not meditation, just living, learning to exist without constant purpose. Think you can handle that?" "Honestly, I have no idea," Bruce said. "Good. Uncertainty means you're learning." That night, Bruce slept without nightmares for the first time since arriving in this world, and when he woke, his chi was flowing naturally, not forced, not calculated. Just there, like breathing, like being alive. 4 weeks after Akuma shattered his hand, Bruce stood in Metro City's underground arena, facing Luke Sullivan. The invitation had come through Chun-Li. Luke, Ken Master's protege and the rising star of the new generation of world warriors, wanted to test the mysterious fighter everyone was talking about. Not to prove dominance, not out of malice, but because Luke believed in pushing warriors to find their true potential. "No hard feelings, whatever happens," Luke had said when they met before the match. Young, blonde, built like a tank, with Ken's aggressive fighting style refined through modern MMA principles. "But I need to see what you've got. Chun-Li says you're special. Ryu says you're learning fast. I want to know if the hype is real." Bruce had agreed. His hand had healed, not perfectly, but functional. More importantly, the month of recovery had changed him in ways he was still processing. Ryu's doing-nothing training had been excruciating in its own way. Sitting with uncomfortable emotions instead of burying them in work. Talking about his past, carefully edited but more honest than he'd been in years. Learning to appreciate moments not for their tactical value, but simply for existing. And through it all, his chi had strengthened, not through effort, but through release. The less he tried to control it, the more readily it responded. Now, standing across from Luke in front of 300 underground fight fans, Bruce felt calm. Not the forced calm of suppressed emotion, but genuine equilibrium. "Ready?" Luke asked, settling into his stance. A blend of Ansatsuken and American boxing, street-tested and brutal. "As I'll ever be," Bruce replied. The bell rang. Luke opened with his signature move, a rushing punch enhanced with chi that created a visible shockwave. Fast, powerful, designed to test reflexes. Bruce slipped it with minimal movement, reading Luke's body language the way he'd read criminals for 15 years. Luke transitioned immediately into a low kick aimed at Bruce's leg. Bruce checked it, felt the impact of chi-enhanced bone on bone, ignored the pain. "Nice," Luke grinned. "Let's see how you handle this." He accelerated, throwing combinations that would overwhelm most fighters. But Bruce had trained with Lady Shiva, fought Deathstroke, survived Ras Al Ghul. Luke was phenomenal, easily among the best pure fighters Bruce had faced, but he was also readable. Luke fought with passion and instinct, which made him powerful but predictable to someone trained in psychological warfare. Every emotional spike telegraphed his next move. Excitement meant aggressive combinations. Frustration meant overcommitment. Focus meant technical precision. Bruce defended, waiting for the right moment. "Come on," Luke shouted, increasing the pressure. "Stop defending and fight me." Bruce saw his opening. Luke overextended on a cross, leaving his ribs exposed for a microsecond. Bruce struck, not with technique alone. He let his chi flow naturally, the way Ryu had taught him. Not forced, not calculated, just released. His fist, wreathed in blue energy, connected with Luke's ribs. The impact sent Luke sliding backward 10 feet. The crowd erupted. Bruce had just landed a clean chi-enhanced strike on a world warrior. Luke rubbed his ribs, his expression shifting from surprise to genuine excitement. There we go, now we're talking. He powered up properly, golden energy erupting around him like flames. This was different from the casual chi enhancement he'd been using. This was full power. "Let's see if you can handle the real thing," Luke said. What followed was the most intense 3 minutes of Bruce's life. Luke attacked with world-class speed and precision, every strike carrying enough force to break concrete. Bruce defended desperately, his technique and chi working in harmony for the first time. He wasn't thinking, wasn't calculating, just responding, trusting his body, his training, his instincts. Dodge, parry, counter, block. Luke's chi-enhanced uppercut came faster than Bruce could track consciously, but his body moved anyway, slipping the strike by millimeters. Bruce countered with a palm strike to Luke's solar plexus, chi flowing naturally, instinctively. Luke grunted, actually hurt by the strike. They separated, both breathing hard. "Okay, I get it now," Luke said, grinning despite the pain. "You're not trying to fight like us. You're fighting like you, using our techniques but making them yours." "I don't have a choice," Bruce said honestly. "I can't match your power, so I have to be smarter." "Smart's good," Luke acknowledged, "but smart only gets you so far against overwhelming force. Let me show you." He launched his ultimate technique, a devastating rising uppercut wreathed in golden chi. Not quite Ken's legendary Shoryuken, but close enough to be terrifying. Bruce had 2 choices: try to block it and fail, or dodge and concede ground. He chose a third option, moved into the strike. It was insane, exactly the kind of calculated risk that shouldn't work. But Bruce had studied Luke's pattern, understood the technique's timing, and found the fraction of a second where the attack was committed but not yet at full power. He slipped inside Luke's guard, too close for the uppercut to land properly, and drove his elbow into Luke's jaw. Both fighters went down. The crowd was screaming. This nobody had just traded blows with the American Dragon and survived. Luke was up first, younger, fresher, less injured, but he was looking at Bruce with new respect. "That was crazy," he said, offering his hand. "Crazy and brilliant. You shouldn't have survived that." Bruce accepted the hand, let Luke pull him up. "I've made a career of surviving things I shouldn't." "I believe it," Luke addressed the crowd. "This fighter, Bruce, just went toe-to-toe with me and landed clean strikes. That's World Warrior quality, people." The crowd's roar was deafening, but Bruce barely heard it. He was focused on something else, the feeling of chi still flowing through his body, not forced, not controlled through sheer will, just natural. Like breathing, like he'd finally stopped fighting himself long enough to become whole. After the match, in the underground's makeshift medical area, Luke sat beside Bruce while a healer examined their injuries. "So what's your story?" Luke asked. "And don't give me the mysterious loner routine. You fight like someone with serious training, but you're not in any database I can access. That's weird." Bruce considered how much to reveal. "Let's just say I'm from far away and learning to adapt to this world's rules." "Fair enough." Luke winced as the healer poked a bruised rib. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Chun-Li brought you to my attention because she thinks you can help with the Shadaloo remnant problem. Ryu's training you because he sees potential, and I just fought you, so I know you've got skills. But I need to know where your head's at," Luke said seriously. "This world's had enough of powerful fighters with questionable morals. Bison, Akuma, Vega. We don't need more people who think might makes right. I've spent my entire life fighting people who think that way," Bruce said quietly. "I won't become what I've hunted." "Good answer, but easy to say, harder to live." Luke stood, tested his weight on his legs. "Here's what I'm offering. Join the World Warrior Network. Not officially. We're not really an organization, just fighters who've agreed to help each other stop global threats. But having backup when you need it, intelligence sharing, training partners who won't kill you, it's useful. In exchange for what? Help us dismantle what's left of Shadaloo. Use those detective skills Chun-Li keeps talking about, and Luke's expression grew serious. Prove that you can be trusted. Because if you can't, if you turn out to be another wannabe dictator, we'll put you down. Hard. Bruce appreciated the honesty. Understood. I accept the offer. Cool. Luke grinned, his easygoing demeanor returning. Welcome to the insanity, Bruce. Fair warning, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Story of my life. That night, Bruce returned to the mountain shrine to find Ryu waiting with tea and a knowing smile. I watched the fight, Ryu said. You've integrated chi into your combat style. Not perfectly, but naturally. That's significant progress. I still lost, Bruce pointed out. You survived against a world warrior in his prime. That's not losing, that's learning. Ryu poured the tea. More importantly, you fought without fear. You trusted your instincts, your training, your chi. That's what I've been trying to teach you. Bruce accepted the tea, feeling the warmth spread through his still aching body. I felt it during the fight. The chi responding without me forcing it. It was different, better. Because you stopped trying to control it and started working with it, Ryu explained. Chi is alive, Bruce. It's your life force. You can't dominate it any more than you can dominate your own heartbeat. You can only guide it, channel it, flow with it. I think I'm starting to understand that. Bruce paused, then asked the question that had been bothering him. Ryu, what happens when I find a way back to my world? If I go home, will I lose this? The chi, the training, all of it? Ryu was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Chi is universal life force. It should exist in any world where life exists. But whether you can access it the same way, he shrugged. That's beyond my knowledge. Then I need to make the most of the time I have here. That's wise. But Bruce, Ryu met his eyes. Don't spend so much time preparing for the future that you forget to live in the present. That was your original problem, remember? Bruce smiled slightly. Hard to forget when you spent a month forcing me to confront it. Good means the lesson stuck. Ryu stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow, Chun-Li is bringing intelligence on the Weaver's latest operation. It's time to put your skills to use. As Bruce lay down to sleep, his healed hand aching pleasantly from the fight, he reflected on how much he'd changed in 6 weeks. He'd arrived in this world as Batman, a creature of shadow and control, defined by mission and purpose. He was becoming something else. Still a detective. Still a fighter. But more human. More willing to feel, to trust, to flow instead of forcing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Weaver, Shadaloo remnants, whatever other threats this world contained. But for tonight, Bruce Wayne allowed himself to simply rest. And for the first time in 30 years, rest felt like enough.
The warehouse district at midnight was exactly the kind of place where Shadaloo would operate. Industrial decay, minimal police presence, plenty of civilians desperate enough not to ask questions. Bruce crouched on a rooftop 300 meters from the target building, examining it through binoculars he'd borrowed from Interpol supplies. Chun-Li's intelligence had been precise. The Weaver was holding 12 kidnapped fighters in that warehouse, preparing to transport them to an unknown facility for chi enhancement experiments. Beside him, Chun-Li checked her equipment, combat outfit optimized for mobility, wrist-mounted communications, and the confidence of someone who dismantled criminal empires before. Thermal imaging shows 15 hostiles inside, she reported quietly, plus the 12 hostages in the basement level. Guards are rotating on a 15-minute cycle, armed with chi disruption weapons. Chi disruption? Bruce asked. Stolen Shadaloo technology. Emits a frequency that destabilizes chi flow, making it nearly impossible to manifest energy attacks. She glanced at him. Which means you'll be relying mostly on technique. I'm comfortable with that. Luke's voice came through their earpieces. I'm in position on the south side, ready when you are. Ryu's voice followed. North entrance secured, no reinforcements getting through this way. Bruce had argued against bringing the World Warriors. This was supposed to be a stealth operation, not a frontal assault. But Chun-Li had overruled him. The Weaver was dangerous enough to warrant overwhelming force. Remember the plan, Chun-Li said. Bruce and I infiltrate, locate the hostages, disable the chi disruption devices. Once those are down, Luke and Ryu come in hot and handle the heavy resistance. Everyone clear? Affirmatives came through the comm. Then let's move. Bruce followed Chun-Li across the rooftops with practiced silence. His month of recovery had included mobility training, learning to navigate this world's urban environments without the grappling hooks and gadgets he'd relied on in Gotham. It was harder, more physically demanding, but also oddly satisfying to rely on pure skill and technique. They reached the warehouse's roof access. Chun-Li pulled out a portable computer interfacing with the security system. Encrypted, she muttered. Military grade. This will take 3 minutes. We have 2 before the guard rotation, Bruce observed, watching the patrol patterns below. Then I'll work faster? Bruce scanned for alternatives. The roof access wasn't the only entry point. There was a ventilation system, drainage pipes, structural weaknesses from years of industrial use. There, he said, pointing to a rusted section of roof where water damage had compromised the metal. We can create an entry point without triggering alarms. Chun-Li looked, assessed, nodded. Good eye, do it. Bruce used a multi-tool to carefully pry loose the corroded panels. Within 90 seconds, they had an opening large enough to slip through. The interior was exactly as depressing as expected. Bare concrete, flickering lights, the smell of oil and desperation. Bruce and Chun-Li moved through the shadows like ghosts, avoiding the patrol routes Bruce had memorized from the thermal imaging. Basement access is through that door, Chun-Li whispered, pointing to a reinforced entrance guarded by 2 armed men. Bruce studied the guards. They weren't elite, probably hired muscle rather than true Shadaloo operatives. That meant they could be neutralized non-lethally. I'll take left, you take right, he murmured. Simultaneous strikes, nerve clusters to induce unconsciousness. On 3. They moved as one. Bruce's strike was textbook perfect. Pressure point manipulation that shut down the guard's motor functions instantly. The man dropped without a sound. Chun-Li's target fell just as silently. They dragged the unconscious guards into shadows, then accessed the basement door. It was locked, but Bruce's training in breaking and entering translated surprisingly well across dimensions. The basement was worse than the main floor. 12 fighters, ages ranging from late teens to mid-20s, sat in restraints that glowed with the same energy signature as the chi disruption devices. Their eyes showed the glazed expression of people who'd been drugged or psychologically broken. Psycho power residue, Chun-Li said grimly, scanning the restraints. They're not just kidnapping these kids, they're conditioning them. Bruce felt rage building, carefully controlled, channeled into focus. He'd seen this before in Gotham, Ra's al Ghul's League, the Court of Owl's Talons, taking young people with potential and breaking them into weapons. Can you free them? He asked. Working on it. Chun-Li interfaced with the restraint system. Encryption's different from upstairs, more sophisticated. This is definitely Weaver's personal work. How long? 5 minutes. Maybe more. We don't have 5 minutes. Bruce could hear footsteps above, the guard rotation discovering their unconscious colleagues. Chun-Li's expression hardened. Then we improvise. Bruce, can you hold off whoever comes through that door while I work? Yes. You're sure? If they have Chi disruption weapons, I'll manage. Bruce positioned himself at the stairs, drawing on 30 years of experience holding impossible positions against overwhelming odds. Just work fast. The door burst open. 6 armed operatives poured through, weapons raised. Target acquired, one said into his radio. 2 intruders in the basement. Bruce moved. No chi, no energy enhancement, just pure technique honed to perfection. He was among them before they could fire, using their clustered formation against them. A nerve strike disabled the first operative. A joint lock broke the second's firing position. A foot sweep took down the third. But there were still 3 more, and they were spreading out, professional enough to avoid bunching up. One fired a chi disruption pulse. Bruce felt the energy wash over him. A nauseating sensation like his entire nervous system was being scrambled. His chi, which had become so natural over the past month, suddenly felt distant and inaccessible. So he stopped trying to access it, fought like Bruce Wayne, like Batman, like a human who'd made himself into something more through sheer discipline and will. He used the environment, kicked a wrench into one operative's face, used a support beam to swing around another's attack, grabbed a chain hanging from the ceiling to execute an aerial strike that shouldn't have been possible without chi enhancement, but was possible with perfect timing and core strength. 2 more operatives down. One remained, the leader, older and more experienced. You're good, the man acknowledged, settling into a professional fighting stance. But you're human. And humans tire. He was right. Bruce was already exhausted, his recently healed hand throbbing, his ribs, never fully recovered from Akuma's strikes, sending pain signals his brain couldn't ignore. But Batman had fought while exhausted, injured, and overwhelmed countless times. He just had to last long enough. The operative attacked with Shadaloo-trained precision. Bruce defended, reading the patterns, waiting for the opening that every fighter eventually gave. There, overcommitment on a straight punch. Bruce slipped inside the operative's guard, drove his elbow into the man's solar plexus, followed with a knee strike to the jaw. The operative went down. Bruce stood over 6 unconscious bodies, breathing hard, every muscle screaming. "Bruce, they're free!" Chun-Li called out. She was helping the rescued fighters stand, supporting those too weak to walk on their own. "Luke, Ryu, we need immediate extraction. Bruce just fought off 6 armed operatives while I worked." "Copy that," Luke's voice came through, "coming in hot." The next 30 seconds were chaos. The warehouse's main floor erupted with combat as Luke and Ryu engaged the remaining guards. Chi-enhanced strikes lit up the darkness like fireworks. Bruce focused on getting the rescued fighters to safety, guiding them up the stairs while Chun-Li covered their retreat. "Move, move, move," he urged, his detective's mind already planning evacuation routes. They emerged onto the main floor to find Luke and Ryu finishing off the last guards. Luke's golden chi blazed like a miniature sun. Ryu's blue energy crackled with controlled precision. It was over in seconds. "All hostiles neutralized," Ryu reported. "No fatalities on either side. How are the hostages?" "Drugged and traumatized, but alive," Chun-Li said. "We need medical immediately." "Already called it in," Luke said. He looked at Bruce, took in the exhaustion and injuries. "You good?" "I'll live." "That's not what I asked." Bruce managed a slight smile. "I'm good." As Interpol medical teams arrived to treat the rescued fighters, Bruce stepped outside into the cold night air. His body hurt. His chi felt depleted, but he'd done it, helped save 12 people from becoming Shadaloo's weapons. Ryu joined him, offering a bottle of water. "You fought well," Ryu said. "A no-chi, pure technique, very impressive." "I didn't have a choice. The disruption field made you adapt, made you prove that you're more than just chi manipulation." Ryu smiled. "That was the final test, though. I didn't plan it that way. You've learned to integrate chi into your fighting, but you haven't become dependent on it. That's wisdom." Bruce drank the water gratefully. "So what happens now?" "Now," Ryu considered. "Now you're a world warrior. Not officially titled, but you've proven yourself. Fought beside us, saved innocents, demonstrated both skill and character. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone." Chun-Li approached, her expression serious. "Bruce, we interrogated one of the operatives before medical took him. The Weaver's planning something bigger. A demonstration of their psycho power enhancement at an underground tournament in 3 days. They're going to transform fighters in public, show the world what they can do." "Where?" "The old Metro City Stadium. Abandoned since Shadaloo's attack 5 years ago, but it's perfect for their purposes. Large enough for a crowd, isolated enough to avoid official interference." Bruce's tactical mind immediately began formulating plans. "They're making a statement, showing that Shadaloo's legacy continues even without Bison. It's a recruitment tool and a terror tactic combined." "Exactly," Chun-Li said. "Which means we need to stop them. Hard." Luke cracked his knuckles. "Finally. Been waiting for a chance to throw down with the Weaver properly." "It won't be a simple fight," Bruce cautioned. "They're expecting resistance. This will be a trap designed to eliminate us while demonstrating their power." "Then we spring the trap smart," Ryu said. "Use their expectations against them. It's what you do best, Bruce." Bruce felt something shift inside him. For 6 weeks, he'd been a student, a trainee, a newcomer learning this world's rules. But now, looking at Chun-Li, Luke, and Ryu, all looking at him for strategic planning, he realized he'd become something else. A valued member of the team, a world warrior, someone who belonged. "All right," he said, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded the Bat family for years. "Here's what we're going to do." As he laid out his plan, detailed, tactical, accounting for dozens of variables, Bruce Wayne felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since arriving in this world. He'd come here as Batman, a symbol, an identity built on tragedy and control. He was becoming something new, still a detective, still a fighter, but no longer alone, no longer imprisoned by the need to control everything through sheer force of will. He was part of something larger than himself, and it felt right. 3 days later, Metro City Stadium would become a battleground. The Weaver would make their play for power. Shadaloo's remnants would show themselves. And Bruce Wayne, the detective from another world, would prove that he'd found his place in this one, not as Batman, as himself. Finally, completely, terrifyingly himself. The confrontation at Metro City Stadium was everything Bruce had predicted and worse. The Weaver turned out to be a former Shadaloo scientist named Dr. Elena Vasquez, brilliant, ruthless, and completely convinced that psycho power enhancement was humanity's next evolutionary step. She'd transformed herself using experimental techniques, becoming something beyond human. Her chi corrupted into purple-black energy that radiated malevolence. The fight was brutal. Luke took a psycho-enhanced strike that cracked 3 ribs. Ryu nearly fell to Satsui no Hado trying to match the Weaver's corrupted power. Chun-Li fought with savage precision, her father's memory driving every strike. And Bruce fought smart. He used the stadium's layout against the Weaver, exploited her arrogance. Coordinated the world warriors not through raw power but through tactical brilliance, turning their individual strengths into a cohesive strike force. When the Weaver unleashed her ultimate technique, a psycho power explosion meant to kill everyone in the stadium, Bruce was ready. He'd spent 3 days analyzing her energy signature, understanding its rhythm, finding its weakness. "Now!" he shouted, and the World Warriors struck simultaneously. Luke's rising uppercut, Ryu's focused chi blast, Chun-Li's devastating kikosho, all coordinated to strike the exact moment the Weaver's power peaked, when she was most powerful but also most vulnerable. The combined assault shattered her enhancement, dispersed the psycho power, and brought her down without killing her. Justice, not vengeance. Interpol took the Weaver into custody. The rescued fighters received proper medical care and counseling. Shadaloo's remnants scattered, their figurehead defeated, their momentum broken. Metro City was safe. For now. 2 weeks after the stadium battle, Bruce stood at Mount Senki's summit one final time. His hand had fully healed. His chi flowed naturally. His integration with the World Warrior Network was complete, and he'd finally found a lead on returning home. A Shadaloo research facility that had been studying dimensional rifts, the same technology that had brought him here. It would take months of analysis, potentially years of work. But it was possible. "You're really going to try to get back," Ryu said. It wasn't a question. "I have to," Bruce said. "My city needs me, my family needs me, I can't just abandon them." "I understand." Ryu was quiet for a moment. "But you'll be different when you return. This world changed you, Bruce, made you more human, more whole. Will Batman still fit who you've become?" Bruce had asked himself that question every day for 2 weeks. "I don't know. Maybe Batman needs to change too. Become less about control and more about flow, balance, everything you taught me. That would be wisdom." Ryu smiled. "You know, when you first arrived, I thought you were another warrior imprisoned by your own strength. I was right, but you broke free, Bruce. You became whole. That's rarer than any technique, more valuable than any power. I had good teachers." Chun-Li approached, having climbed the mountain one last time to say goodbye. "The Dimensional Research Facility is secured. Interpol's science team will work with you to analyze the technology. No guarantees, but there's hope." "Hope's enough," Bruce said. Luke joined them, grinning despite the bandages still wrapped around his torso. "So the mysterious detectives got away home. You going to tell us your real story before you leave?" Bruce considered. These people had saved his life, taught him to be whole, accepted him without demanding explanations. "I'm from a place called Gotham City," he said slowly. "In another dimension. I spent 15 years fighting crime there under a different name. I became someone else, something else, a symbol meant to terrify criminals, and I lost myself in the process." "But you found yourself here," Chun-Li said. "Yeah, I did." Bruce smiled, genuine, not the practiced social expression he'd perfected. "This world stripped away everything I thought defined me, made me rebuild from scratch. And what I rebuilt was better, more honest, more human." "You'll take that back with you," Ryu said. "The chi, the lessons, the understanding, it's part of you now. No dimensional barrier can change that." "I hope you're right." They stood together as the sun set over Metro City one more time. 4 warriors who'd become friends, bound by combat and mutual respect. Whatever happened next, whether Bruce found his way home or remained in this world forever, he knew one truth. He was no longer the man who'd arrived 6 weeks ago. No longer the detective who thought control was the same as strength. No longer Batman, the symbol without humanity. He was Bruce Wayne, whole, flawed, human. And finally, after 30 years, that was enough. In the months that followed, Bruce worked with Interpol's scientists while continuing to help the World Warriors dismantle Shadaloo's remnants. He became Metro City's underground detective, the fighter who solved problems with brilliance rather than brute force. He taught Ken about tactical analysis, learned meditation from Dalsim, sparred with guile, and discovered that military discipline and vigilante justice weren't so different. Even Jury grudgingly admitted he'd gotten interesting, and every day he practiced chi manipulation, integrating it so completely into his being that it became as natural as breathing. When he finally cracked the dimensional technology, if he cracked it, he'd return to Gotham transformed. Batman would remain, the symbol, the mission, the endless war on crime, but underneath the cowl would be someone different. Someone who'd learned that strength without humanity was just violence, that control without emotion was just imprisonment, that the deepest power came not from suppressing who you were, but embracing it completely. The Dark Knight would return to Gotham, but he'd bring the light with him, and that would change everything.